Oh, yeah, it is I. I'm back. It's the old wolf. Time for another episode of Dancing with Wolves. Tonight's episode 84, Interview with a Vampire. Couldn't be more simpler, couldn't be more direct. For those of you who are watching and not just listening, yes, the vampire witch, Heather Salome, will be joining us in a little bit. As always, I'm trying to be better about this, and I'm going to really make a point to emphasize this. These shows may be triggering. I use language. I tend to use a lot of language. I have a lot of people who have followed me either through music or through this, and now through WRFZ, through Rochester Free Radio. But my radio show is different with two specific things. One, obviously out here, because of social media and YouTube and all that groovy shit, I will not be playing any commercial music. So you're not going to hear Led Zeppelin. You're not going to hear Concrete Blonde. As much as I would love to do it, well, yeah, it just doesn't work that way. What you will hear, however, are bands that have either graciously given me permission or obviously to the degree that I have created or worked with them. So it's my music. So nobody's going to shut me down about playing my music, aka that track that we open the show with. That's me and my buddy Matt Brown and a couple other people like Tony Rodriguez and Jeff Thal, guys that I've been doing collaborative music since before the pandemic. So yes, disclaimer, the views, opinions, thoughts, expressions, words, language, everything is mine and mine alone unless you choose to share with it, and you're more than welcome to. I operate freely, but also in the same analogy, I don't want to trigger people. So sometimes, and I've gotten a couple emails about it, and I respect it and I appreciate it. But I believe that everybody has a story to tell. I believe that there are always perspectives. So I've been trying really hard to kind of find that middle ground that says, you know, we need to look at different things. Now, sometimes these conversations will go deep, as they probably will tonight, knowing Heather. So you never know what's going to come out. So just to get it out of the way, fuck. Yes, because I can say that. Shout out to my witch, Shia. Welcome, Francesca Faith. That is a very cool name. Very cool name. My sister, Jennifer Scott Green, as always. And my sister from a galaxy far, far away, my brother Derek, she is Lord Vader's wife. And she finds your lack of faith disturbing. Just saying. My brother Derek, he's got that covered. So again, see that now Shia's already out and people's just like, Oracles is in here hiding too. She sees her. I can't. So I can never truly tell. You know, sometimes people will chat and they'll say something and then, yep, there she goes. She jumped out of the shadows, shook her ass real quick and just see, ha, get back into the wind. That's how she rolls. Shia's gonna out everybody, Raven, Teresa. Well, listen, I love my sister, especially because they are incredible musical talents. For those of you who don't know, Raven is the lead singer for Bonded by Darkness, and I'm going to be playing their new video track again. And Teresa is one of the voices and the guitar player from Hollowell. She will be performing this Saturday, October 7th, as long as the lake doesn't swallow us all up. I'm trying to use my weather magic to hold off any bullshit coming down on that. But yes, Hollowell, Teresa and her band will be performing October 7th over at the I Square House of Guitars. I'm going to talk a little bit about that later. But you can check them out on Facebook, YouTube, social media, Bonded by Darkness and Hollowell. And I promote both these bands a lot. So, you know, if you're following me in any particular context, you've heard these guys. You've heard me talk about them. I've had Josh and Raven on the show. I'm going to have them back again on the show. I want to get them, Frail, and other bands from their area up here to kind of do a show with bands like Hollowell, myself, Annika. Yeah, we're looking at some things for next year. The wolf is not going to sit idly by and just let some of this bullshit go down. And that's all I got to say about that right now, because I don't want to fuck up the vibe. But we all know, to different degrees, we all have to deal with it every day in life. A lot of people talk a really good talk, but they're just they're used salesmen, used car salesmen in disguise. They want to sell you some bullshit and illusion. They want to convince you that, hey, it's that person's fault over there. Sometimes it is, but more times than not, it's Kool-Aid, man, And I don't mind Kool-Aid when I make it, but I don't trust it when somebody else makes it. So, is that a double standard? Maybe. But I also like to believe, and I'm not afraid, and part of why I do this, I'm not afraid to be challenged. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'd rather learn something and have that accurate information than to walk around like a fucking idiot, okay? And my mother, because I know she's lurking out there somewhere, because she always is, my mother would be the first one to tell you. You know what I mean? It's better to just take it, take the lesson from it, and move forward. Because anything else, you're fucking yourself, and that isn't always the Babylon experience that you want it to be. See a little play in there. Those of you who know. Maybe you don't know, you couldn't. You want to find out? You want to know more? Go visit LadyShia.com. That's the only way for me to explain it, because it's a witch thing, and I'm just a fucking wolf. So, yeah, LadyShia.com. For those of you, again, that are watching, if you want to reach out, if you want to come on the podcast, if you got something you want to say, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, or you got some music, you want to get it on the radio show, you want to get it on the podcast, Wolf at oldwolfmusic.com. So, yes, I'm going to, I think, pop this over real quick. I want to talk about this, and then I'm going to go get her. I want to thank Lorena McKenna and her people. They have graciously put up a little bit of underwriting for not only the radio station, but for her tour. She's going to be up here in Rochester October 17th for the Revisited anniversary tour. This is a big tour that's going on throughout the fall here in the U.S. and Canada. And then in the spring, she's jumping over to Europe and the United Kingdom. Now, for any of you that follow any dynamic of Celtic music, she has been one of the premier voices. She is an incredible musician, gifted music writer, all kinds of awards. She's been up for a Grammy a couple of times. Really powerful stuff. And, full disclosure, Shia was the one that turned me on to it. And she was like, it was something that she felt strongly about. So we're supporting her. We're saying, hey, if you're checking this out, if you're listening, if you're in the Rochester area, or if you're in any of these areas, and there's a bunch of them after Rochester. Unfortunately, the Washington, D.C. show is sold out. But for you folks over there in Canada, Winnipeg, Saskatoon, Edmonton, and Calgary, and then obviously we have followers and friends and stuff over in Europe and in the United Kingdom. So there's a whole bunch of dates that are going to run through, they're going to stop in Frankfurt, Geneva, Zurich, Paris, Vienna, Budapest, Hamburg, Berlin, Brussels, Amsterdam, Dusseldorf, Antwerp, London, and a whole bunch of others. So, again, I know she wouldn't use this language, so I can use this language for her. She's fucking putting it out there, okay? She's going out and she's bringing this. A lot of people have wanted it. And, you may know her music from some TV shows and movies. So she's done a lot of really great stuff. And just, again, in the baseline context of giving really a solid, beautiful voice to Celtic music, to give it, a little bit more of the standing that it deserves, within the professional communities. So this is our way of trying to do our part to support some of these elements, okay? And, it's a really cool tour. And I'm going to be really blunt. In comparison to what a lot of other artists of her caliber are charging for shows, she's not looking to gouge people. You know what I mean? There are obviously expenses that come into being able to take the type of show with, strings and cello players and, full orchestrated dynamics and everything like that. That stuff's not cheap. So to bring that type of show, that kind of experience, yeah, obviously it's going to cost a couple more dollars than like when fucking Ed Contini and I do a show over at the House of Guitars and, we're just going to make our fucking shit scream. But that's, again, why she has the recognition that she's earned. Okay, so again, thank you again, Lorena McKenna. And Shia and Ativia, another one of our WRFZ personalities, will be at that show covering it over at the Kodak Theater. You can learn more online. You can visit Lorena or the Kodak Theater or any of those other dates. But again, the easiest way if you want to learn more is go check out her site. Yeah, I figured it was the easiest way, Raven. Heather came on and did my radio show last night, and it was a great time, great conversations. But she and I were a little bit limited to the degrees of certain things of how we could talk about and what we could talk about because, yeah, it's fucking FM radio. We've had that conversation. Josh and I have joked around about that. This is the fucking insanity that we live in. It's like, okay, so we're desperately trying to hold on. We're trying to drag the station into, the new era. So, using Anne Rice's analogy, the Savage Garden is real. It's fucking everywhere. But Heather really has, I think, a beautiful and an honest take on it. But those are things, again, that I'm going to let her explain because it really is tonight. Interview with a Vampire. Yes, Oracles, thank you. She was checking it out. I appreciate that. All right, so I'm going to cut. And since I got Raven here, for those of you, again, who are checking out Bonded by Darkness, and I absolutely recommend that you do their album Obsidian. It kicks ass. Ass blistering metal. My tagline for them, okay, and I'm taking credit for it because I said it. Imagine, if you will, Alanis Morissette consuming the souls of Slayer and then being born as something else.
You were born to go away, not in the dirt. You were lame. I told you not to come for me. 6 feet under, we were meant to be.
So yeah, welcome back. That was Bonded by Darkness, Dancing on Your Grave, their new video. And as mentioned by Shia multiple times, yes, that is Raven O'Reilly doing her thing, weaving her magic. Great track, great band. Definitely check them out. They have a show coming up October 20th, okay, over at the Foundry with Frail and Grabe. That's going to be in Lakewood, Ohio. Really cool show. Anybody down in that area, let me tell you, these are bands definitely worth checking out. I'm going to kick out some Frail a little bit later when we take a break. But I got Heather here on the phone with us. Heather, the Vampire Witch, say hello to the wolves.
Hello. How is everybody?
Listen, we are still, I mean, you and I came off of this last night.
Yeah.
So I already had a bunch of this spinning in my head. And, you know, let's just start off with the first things first.
Okay.
You have to get your first fuck out of the way.
All right. My first fuck out of the way.
Yep, you did it. You're done. See, now we can move on. So anyway, yes. Well, you know, we don't have the FCC, you know, stalking us like vampires. Ooh, yeah. Well, I mean, I guess that's the. But you're the Vampire Witch. You're going to be out at the Rockin' Oddities Con October 28th, 29th. Some of the folks here listened to the show last night, but let's assume nobody knows who the fuck you are. So you have been invited into the house as a vampire now. Tell us your story. Did it start in Louisiana on a plantation?
No. I wish it was that classy. Mine was in the well, it's a seaside town. It's Port Jefferson, New York, is where I grew up. So Long Island. I'm a Long Islander. But I was always intuitive, could always see things. Started a tarot deck showed up when I was 14, but when I was 17, I ran into one of my family, and that's what we call each other, is one of the family, who kind of spontaneously started my awakening towards realizing what I was, and that was a vampire. So yes, I don't just take the name of a vampire because I like the aesthetics or anything. I do consume energy, life force energy. I don't drink blood anymore.
Yeah, a little bit of disclaimer. Anymore.
But I do feed off of people's yucky stuff. So like if you've ever touched an aura or see auras and you know where things in the chakra system, energetic bodies, you know, there's sometimes blockages or heaviness or even like just sludgy stuff in there. And part of what I do in my business is I siphon that off for them. And it helps them, the individuals, see their shadows a little clearer and a little less scary, because it's kind of like when you're really, really sick and really, really like physically ill, you feel like you're going to die. Like you feel like that's it. You're going to, that's the end. You're never going to get better. There's no, the end, it's getting dark and you're doing like, you know, get very dramatic, and it's really hard because you feel so sick. Same thing with your energetic body. If it's all clogged up and gunky, everything seems too hard, that it's not that you just got terrible luck, or you're just terrible at picking people to be in your life, or you just have, you know, all that stuff, when it turns out like you're actively choosing the not so great choices for where you want to go, because you're either in fear or embarrassment or shame, or, you know, got shadow stuff that you haven't integrated. So that's a lot of what I do, and that's a lot. I just
so in some horrifying alternate reality, and just I'm going to simplify it with pop culture and a little bit of humor just to protect my sanity here. You're basically a combination between Akasha and the Scarlet Witch. You have magic and witchcraft, but you're also a vampire and somebody that you probably shouldn't fuck with, especially on a dark, shadowy kind of street corner kind of situation.
This is very true, especially being like 5'2" and the tiny little things. So, you know, people take double takes when they see my picture next to my booth, and they're like, "Oh, where's the Vampire Witch?" And I'm like, "I am she," because you know, it's part of the glamour magic too. Is, you know, I can come across very, very basic human, like freckles and dimples. Like that's who I am, and
Well, you've learned to adapt in many ways. You have now chosen a path. I think, the way you described it to me was a little bit more balanced. Obviously there was a point where you embraced it for the deeper old blood lore, but as you evolved, and we'll use another pop culture analogy, you're kind of like a daywalker now. You're using the energy. You made a very specific point to say that it is very much based off of a mutual type of understanding. In other words, you don't just go hunt people down. You basically are invited, and people actually, want that experience because you show them not only the elements of the darkness, but you show them how to get out of the darkness, to remove the darkness, and give them better tools to cope with.
Correct. Yes, that's exactly it. And it's almost like back in, old days when they used to do bloodletting for people as a course regimen for health.
Yes, well, see, there was no way I was going to call you a fucking leech. Okay, it just wasn't going to happen.
I call myself a vampiric sea cucumber because that's kind of what they do. They eat the gunk on the gunk on the bottom of the ocean floor. But yeah,
and that's really cool. You're not afraid to just be like, listen, it's like dirty jobs. You're going to go to places that nobody else is going to fucking go for all intents and purposes.
Yes, I like to tell people I jump off the cliff of madness and I help them back up so they don't have to go down there. But they get to look over while they're there and actually see oh, yeah, no, that's in there. But now I know that it's in there, and me not just closing my eyes and going la 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 la. I won't fall off the cliff if I know that that's there,
But all joking aside, you do frame it within what you and I both refer to as practical dynamics, practical magic, because many of these things are conditioned. They're elements about traumas. They're elements about misperceptions. You also called it their fear, stigma, trauma. There's so many different variations within that spectrum. And you really look at it for how it applies to them. Obviously, there's, you've mentioned it, you have some theatrical elements and stuff like that to create the energy, to create the atmosphere. But what you do really goes to what I like to call the darkness that we all carry.
Absolutely. And it's based, so I always describe it when I say I'm a shadow worker or a shadow guide. When I refer to the shadow, it's very much the Carl Jung version of the shadow self and all the repressed stuff from just living our lives and having a fear of being othered or abandoned because we are either too much or too sensitive or too bossy or too quiet or, all the things that we grow up, people trying to mold us. And we're like, oh, we're not safe if we're this person. So I should really tailor my behavior in such a way. And I can't be that bubbly person. I can't be that overly, my laugh is so loud, so I'll just cover my mouth,
Well, that's reflective of the conditioning that I'm talking about. Yeah, we're societal standards say, hey, don't think this way, don't act that way, don't dress that way, don't talk that way. Raven O'Reilly has a question for you, and she asks, may I ask what your practice is like? Is there any specific deities that you use?
Well, that's a great question, because for the first I don't know, so many years, it's been 15 years, I kind of work just with energies and elements. I'm a very elemental witch, but within the last 2.5 years, I actually had deities approach me, which was a new experience for me. And I was going through a lot of stuff that needed healing. So the first one that stepped forward was Anubis. I worked with him for a very long time. In fact, I was like, I never wanted to let him go, but he said it was time for me to move on. And I was not a monotheist and I needed to knock it off. So he moved on. He moved me on, and he said, here you go, and handed me off to Lilith, which was like...
Listen, Lilith has been coming up a lot. A lot of people I've been talking to, she has been a reappearing character, and there is no correlation. I'm talking like people who, are in Lithuania, Kansas, New York. You see where I'm going. And there's no other correlation besides, for whatever reason, and it's very similar to what you said. What she is imprinting, she is speaking. Maybe she's been speaking the whole time, and maybe we're all just, or some of us at least, are being able to tune into that. But I've been hearing her name pop up a lot lately.
Yeah, she's pretty powerful. She's pretty she's badass. I mean, obviously, I always harken back to my first experience of her name was Lilith Fair, because that's how old I am. And, it was a female-oriented music festival. And that was about reclaiming safe spaces for women and women in music and everything like that. And that was back. And then, her being handed off from Anubis to Lilith, I had to do the research and learn about, her origins in, Assyria to Judaism to the Goetia and all that kind of stuff. So I was learning
She's one that you can definitively look at and see where that demonization, where that rewriting, and where a lot of that, well, like we were kind of touching upon last night, the kind of co-opting between the new religion versus the old religion, especially if you look at like within, Eastern European Romani. And then, like you said, if you follow that pattern across Europe into Northern Africa, there's a definitive theme there that's happening with the rewriting of the lore.
Mm-hmm, for sure. And it's interesting because she is being kind of rewritten into popular culture again. As you said, you're seeing her pop up. It's almost disjointed, but if you look at even like TikTok or anything like that, you'll see her pop up frequently. And whether or not that's authentic people are just trying to be like, ooh, Lilith, she's spooky, or if they're actually, connecting to her, that doesn't matter. The fact that her name is being spoken is obviously a choice by her to become more visible. She is no longer my primary deity I work with, because when she came into my life was for a very specific thing I needed to work on again. This is how my deity work has originated. So I still kind of have her around, but where I've gone now, it's kind of more expansive and diverse. And when I tell people sort of what I work with now, they look at me like it's very crazy, which I'm used to at this point. But
all of us within, especially within this community, within these wolves, we get together to dance because, everyone else has that narrative. And we already know it hasn't really fucking worked out too well. You can make a case. Listen, we got some great things. We got technology, we've got science, we got medicine, we've got this where we can actually communicate, at different parts of the world without, having to, spend, 180 days at sea to make it fucking happen. But also on the flip side, as you said, a lot of stuff, again, gets co-opted. I don't look at her maybe in the same analogy, but when you said that about, some people are just maybe jumping on the bandwagon, I was imagining like, the new line of Lilith hula hoops, you know what I mean? Everybody could just start spinning them around their fucking waist and be like, hey, look at me. I'm channeling Lilith now. But
yes, and now it's on fire.
I have one that I used on Shia one time because she dances with this, and I know a lot of people who try very hard to be honest to it, and they run into this and the fake-a-witch dynamic. Witchcraft is becoming popular to some degrees again, but it is like everything else. It gets co-opted. You know what I mean? You have like the characters. I love the ones where the guys, they come out and they're like, yes, come follow me. I'm all mystical. Come service me. Oh, that includes sexually. And it's just like, you're a fucking mook, man. You're using that to prey upon women. And it's so obvious. But that's the same dynamic with religion. It's the same dynamic with music. It's the same dynamic with movies, art. You see where I'm going? Anything that people enjoy and they want to be a part of can be weaponized. I call it weaponized empathy, but the analogy is it's all energy. No matter how you want to slice it, it's just a different form of energy.
And that's why I think it is her doing it and not necessarily like people trying to co-opt so greedily. I think that she is allowing the co-opting so her name gets more popular. And I think, was it Shia just said that people are tired of the shit and Lilith helps people stand up to it. And that is exactly my experience with her. I needed to put my big girl pants on, and she taught me how. So I do think that there's a big reckoning coming, not like rapture or whatever, but like there's a big change, and energies like Lilith, like Hecate, like these divine dark feminines, or even just the dark entities in general, but not dark in the evil way, but dark in kind of my way, are very much going to be the driving force of how we get our whole world back on the track it was supposed to go to. Like we just got so sidetracked into, patriarchal, capitalists, colonialists, BS, that we got lost in the way.
Well, so, I mean, this is the same narrative that we've seen historically, and you and I were talking about it within the framework of the church. It's not to begrudge anybody faith or spirituality, because when it's honest, it is a beautiful thing, regardless of wherever you're coming from. But light and dark exist hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. So to try and create this, imaginary narrative where it's like, ooh, all it really is conditioning, it's gaslighting, it's bullshit. It doesn't hold water against, like you and I were talking, it doesn't even hold water against their own fucking words. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's just like, well, Jesus is good to use, for the sales pitch with him on the cross, but we're not actually going to follow any of his fucking teachings. No, we can't do that. We can't hang out with lepers or whores, right?
Yeah. He was
right. We're gonna throw the bankers out, like they sign our paychecks. What the fuck?
Right.
George Carlin had a great skit, and it's just like, God is all knowing, all loving, all powerful. He was there in the beginning, in the end, and ever shall be. But he's just not good with money. And for 1995, you can help God. You know what I mean? And that type of shit, you remember, seeing those shows, yes. Fucking 700 Club and Jimmy Swagger and all these other fucking, used car salesmen that are just like, hi, and it was all bullshit. And there were just thousands of people just like drinking, like, give me more. And then eventually, the illusion falls apart. They get caught with their dicks in a fucking airport stall, or, with a 12-year-old girl, or some other horrible fucking analogy. And then people act surprised, like, what? And it's like, you fucking, you give them these things. They've been doing it for generations. And we just, like you said, we continue to ignore it. We let it happen and we make excuses. But we'll point the finger at somebody because they're dressing in a way where there's too much ass crack, and we can't have ass crack out on the public streets, you know what I mean? Unless, obviously, it's endorsed by somebody who's going to make a profit, like OnlyFans. It's cool for OnlyFans, but, if you want to express it in some other way, no.
Correct. Like it's like, what were you wearing when you were attacked? Well, sweatpants, right? That people are awful. And it's that when we point this, we start shedding light into those dark crevices and they start getting squeamish. It's because I feel like Christianity, anyone who was a pointing at these shadow spots, they're like, well, if you're seeing that, it's because you yourself are doing it. And it was about that. That was that start of that individualization where, you can't rely on your neighbor or your friend or your community, because if you start seeing in those ugliness and trying to do something about it, well, you're a witch and you're going to get burned.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, that is the simple analogy. We have different ways of doing it. We burn people on social media. We make them outcasts. We say, no, you must be gone. And don't get me wrong. There are certain elements I agree with, and I've been talking for years about this, that it can't just be women saying this. All right. It isn't fair. It isn't right that it's only women who are going to call it out. Other men need to call other men out. To some degrees, I think that has more of a powerful impact because they're conditioned to be like, oh, they're just women. What do they fucking know? But on the other side of the coin, like
using your privilege as a platform is part of it. Yes.
But also in the narrative, as men, how do we break the cycle? We have to teach our sons. We have to be better fucking examples and say, yo, you can't just pull your dick out. No, that's not acceptable. And you know what? If you're going to get canceled, you do stupid shit, guess what? You get canceled. Now, some of it, obviously, we both know can go to extremes, but this is nature resetting itself. It's been so out of balance now that we're going to have a period of just the over dynamic now, where it's like a pendulum that it's just coming completely back across the other end of the spectrum. And you also called it, a lot of women refuse now to buy into the old narrative, and that's freaking men out. It's especially old white guys. They're freaking the fuck out.
And it's amazing. And I love it. And I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, but listen, you should savor it because it's been a long time coming.
It's delicious and I love it.
Now, as a slightly older white guy, it's sometimes a little disconcerting, but I have long hair and tattoos, so I just try and just kind of grin and be like, I've been on your side since the beginning. I love you all. And hope that they don't put me in a fucking wicker man and just be like, here's another one, and it just end up getting fucking torched. But I've also, all joking aside, tried to install that dynamic into my son. And I feel in that aspect, at least I was a success. And I was lucky because my mother, in her own way, she was the one who exposed me to the Tyra. She had me reading, fucking Carlos Castaneda at fucking 9 years old, what I mean? Dragging me around to, different elements of music and this and that. And I couldn't appreciate it at the time because I was a fucking lunatic. And it wasn't until I got older and had a son that I realized, I was like, oh, okay, I can take all this stuff. And, it works. Now, I know you're a parent as well, too. You have 2 kids, right?
I have 3 boys.
You have, oh my God. I raised 1. I mean, a lot of the boys come along with it. Are they at the age where all their friends now have descended upon you as well?
No, they're still very little. I have a 4, 6, and 8-year-old, so they're still tiny.
You still have time. You hang on to your sanity, because I know
they still think I'm cool. They love to tell their teachers that their mom is a vampire, and that's always a good parent teacher conference to explain. But their school is really cool, and had me come in for career day on how to teaching about being a professional witch, which I thought was amazing. Because if I had a professional witch come into my 2nd grade class, my life could have been a lot easier and a lot more direct as to where I was supposed to be going.
Well, but that's also part of the narrative, I think, that's scaring a lot of people, is that it is now opening the doors into things that have really, again, been misrepresented, misplayed. We all know, most of us within this community especially, and I know you know, that the dynamics of quote-unquote witchcraft and all this were based on elements of healing. They were based off of the early elements of, therapy, of, everything from, midwifing to what plants were safe to eat. You see where I'm going? This was not like some nefarious, boiling children in, vats of oil. Did it happen? Yeah, that's what the church did during the fucking Inquisition. So it's kind of ironic.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? That, you have this narrative where witches are these nasty crones, but it was actually the fucking church that was committing all these, especially during those heavy religious purges, where
it's institutional projection.
Right. They wiped out entire villages and entire, bloodlines in absolutely horrific fashion to, set the example for the other, heretics. But, especially, and that's just one particular little chapter, So when you spread it out across it, it's like, who really is the fucking monster? Now, you used Jung, and Jung would, I think, have probably, theorized that would be reflective of the monsters within them. What better way to distract from that monstrosity is to try and point the finger and make everyone else the fucking monster. It is that pure level of transference. They know they're fucking monsters. They know their shit is bullshit, but they're going to make sure to point the finger at everybody else.
Yep, and that was where we were talking about yesterday, the othering. Where's the line drawn? And it was like, as things progressed, well, how do we differentiate the us from them and the other, and how do we elevate us so more people come to us? We will feed the poor and clothe them and give them all of this community stuff. That'll get them in the door, but how do we get them to stay? And that's where that's where the fear comes, and they start building up the fear of, if you go out there, the monsters are going to get you. If you come in here, you'll stay safe and warm. And, sometimes it was just a matter of survival, where it was like, well, the church is going to feed me.
Well, some of it is also conditioning. And I'm going to take, I'm going to take a live moment here to address something that came up. Jeff, no, listen, if you want to stick around for a minute, I was actually going to get to your commentary, brother, because I feel for you. But here's the first thing. Okay. Women are not in control telepathically. Believe me, if they were in control telepathically, we wouldn't be having this fucking conversation. Heather wouldn't have gone through the things she's gone through. Shia, every woman out here would not have gone through the things they've gone through if they actually had that kind of fucking power. But the other side of it, and I feel you. Yeah, you're right. Fear is control. That's a great point. We do feel sometimes like our lives have been sabotaged for whatever reason, because we speak out against something, or we say how we feel, or just any other narrative. So it is not to suggest that anybody is better per se, because we all know that people can be good or they can be bad. You know what I mean? Just because somebody is this, just because I'm a guy with long hair and tattoos, doesn't make me a drug dealer. And just because Heather has tattoos and some funky looking teeth doesn't mean she's hanging out in a pizza parlor in Washington, D.C., eating small children while being funded by a Democratic conspiracy. I'm just saying.
I think I missed this comment. Was there? I didn't
you may not be able to see it because they float around. But in all seriousness, this is what they do. They want to keep us divided. They want to keep us pointing the finger, freaking out, okay? Because if we come together, they're fucked, okay? And again, George Carlin context. He called this fucking years ago, decades ago. They're all co-opted. None of them really give a shit because they're getting paid. So we talk a really good talk, but we don't actually do the things that we need to do. And now it's at a point where we can't even, to some degrees, have certain conversations. We can't talk about sexuality without people losing their fucking minds. You know what I mean? We can't talk about elements like a woman's right to choice, you know what I mean, especially within her body, without it becoming a morality spin. It doesn't mean we have to agree, but you can't have one without the other. You can't say, hey, I want my rights, whatever particular dynamic of those rights are, but say, because you're different, you're not going to get those same fucking rights. So I always use the analogy, if the government were to come down and say, hey, listen, everybody's got to register your dick, and we're going to put, this, that, and the other thing, men would lose their fucking minds. They'd be like, nope, nobody's touching my dick. But it's a double standard because we want to tell women what to do with their bodies, especially in the dynamic. And this is the insane part. They're the ones that reproduce. We don't have to. I mean, again, no man has ever had to carry a fucking child. At least to the best of my knowledge. Am I wrong on that? Have we gotten to the technology part that we can actually implant a child into a man yet? I don't think we're there, right?
Not that I know of, but I also know that, yeah.
So that's still accurate.
But there are men who give birth, so.
Okay, well, I must admit, I missed that part. You're going to have to explain that one.
Trans men.
Oh, okay, cool. All right, listen, different dynamic. Thank you. No, that's an honest point. So we kind of have, I wasn't sure if we were able to, from the pure science, be able to do that kind of thing. I try to stay within certain dynamics of things, but I also know to some degrees these experiences are unique to individuals. You know what I'm saying? So I don't have a frame of reference. That's why, again, I've always been very vocal about the right, to choose, is because I'm not a woman. I shouldn't have a say in it anyway. That's my mentality on it.
That's why I want to know what this comment said.
Oh no, his comment was that he felt that women are in control telepathically because He felt that his life had been sabotaged for exposing his in-laws and relatives. And I know a lot of men
that's interesting
tend to sometimes come from that conditioned element. It's not their choice. As men, we're taught that emotions are not good. They're a sign of weakness. You know what I mean? We're conditioned.
He did the hard thing and he got burned by it, so he is blaming women.
Maybe to a certain degree, but I think to some degrees, and a lot of times, I try and find the way to connect people back together. Just because somebody's had an experience doesn't mean it should define everything else. And that's one of the things we tried to do within this community is be open-minded, especially if people are, trying to express us. I'm not one of those people, unless somebody goes off the rails and says something disrespectful or tries to go, you know what I'm talking about, into that fucking berserkoid bullshit.
That sounds like some shadow stuff. That's why I wanted to know too.
Yes.
Like he was hurt. He was hurting.
Yeah, and listen,
what happens.
It happens. It does happen. It happens to men and women and people who identify as other things. It's not reflective, I think, of sexuality. I think it's reflective of weaponized empathy.
Right. So, it was just it was because women controlling telepathically is an interesting takeaway from whatever was experienced there. It almost seems like that loss of control was very disheartening. And instead of saying, "Oh, crap, I did this hard thing, everyone's turning on me," and I was just pointing something out or taking accountability. It's, well, everyone's on her side, so she must be controlling everybody telepathically. It's kind of it's trying to put it delicately. It's obviously coming from a place of very hurt feelings and emotions.
But we both know it happens on both ends of the spectrum.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's why I'm trying to say,
right.
It's not.
But men will do it even, men will gaslight. They'll create these analogies, these illusions of justification.
They're never taught to feel their feelings or process their feelings or speak their feelings. Or if they do those things, they are brutally shot down a lot because society is built that way. That's what's really hard to combat right now too. For men, it's a lot of having to do a thing that might ostracize you from your peers in order to evolve and grow towards the right direction. So is it worth it? Probably not right now, because they want to feel safer in their groups. And so you can't really blame them, because a lot of the times, I wouldn't want to leave my groups of friends either,
Well, see,
without any promise.
I went through that.
Yeah.
See, I actually went through that, and I found it actually very refreshing once I got through the grieving part of it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Once I got through the grieving part and I recognized, okay, this is what it is. You know what I mean? And I had a lot of people who thought I was either insane for wanting to raise my kid, by myself, not wanting to go out and, replace the mother figure, for not just dumping him and just, go do what you want to do. And some of it came out in weird different ways. My first experiences being the only guy on a fucking PTA definitely enlightened me to some of the other narratives of things. That, listen, if you don't
side eye, I can imagine.
Well, listen, if you don't experience it, there's really no way to understand it. It's like trying to describe to somebody what chocolate tastes like who's never tasted chocolate. How do you describe that?
Because also, if they experienced a similar thing, their experience is still not the same.
True. But it at least gives you some amount of perspective. And let me ask you something. In your experiences, and especially within the framework of what you do, but also obviously to the degree that what you believe, what has been the biggest obstacle or the biggest negative that you have experienced within that?
Within what? Within the,
with what, as being a vampire witch? Because obviously some people have to come at you with, their own preconceived notions of this and that.
I've had 2 things, but they got shot down really quick, and I didn't even have to do anything, because the people that up here they're ready to jump on others to protect their friends. I don't know. This is a new experience for me, because I was always very much had a lot of acquaintances, never a deep thing, but So my journey was like, I had a very long period of, I guess we call it the dark night of the soul. It was about 10 years. So that was all taken from
only 10 years?
Only 10 years. Well, about. Well, I mean,
Hey, no, let's not to discount it. I know myself and a lot of people went on much longer, deeper runs on that. And you and I both know a lot of them never came out of that either, too.
Yes. And that was a thing, like, went hard and fast because it was also it coincided with the birth of my children. So it was kind of like this spiraling downward because I had denied of who I was. I thought I had to put all this stuff away and be a grown up, in quotes. And like I met my husband, got married, went back to school, became got my social studies certification to teach my master's degree in history, and then did all the things and nothing worked, and I was miserable and depressed and spiraled outward because I was doing all of the things that my parents told me I would be good at or would be a great fit for me, that I thought I was expected to be in society, like a role. Like if you saw pictures of me, it's ridiculous. I look like a Karen, a young Karen. It's ridiculous.
Wow.
Yeah.
You really went there too.
I went when I do something really hard. I go all the way. It's
you don't fuck around. You're like, hey, listen, if you're going to fuck it up, you're going to fuck it up the whole way. I'm going to be a basic bitch. I'm going to be the basic bitch, the most basic bitch of all. And that's what I went for. And, I just, it was a spiraling depression into nothing. I didn't have a community. My parents, kind of always judged me about how I was parenting. It was a thing. So what happened was my husband, he saw me. I had given up. I'd given up on doctors, specialists, because I also had because my vampirism. If I don't conserve energy, I get very, very sick. I was on heart monitors. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with my circulation. My hips and joints were going. I was just like, I was falling apart because I refused to feed. And there was a mystery. And he found my box of tarot cards and my old books of shadows and all of my research from years prior. And he's like, you know what? You should go through this. And, he was always said, he's the one who's like, I may not believe in it, but it doesn't, just because I don't believe in it doesn't make it not true. That's a great perspective. That is the pure definition of being open-minded. Just because we don't understand or believe it doesn't necessarily make it any less real.
So I swear he's more psychic than even I am, because he put those in my hand and it was like, oh, I remember. It was almost like I went into this kind of fog of, who am I? I am just mother, or I am just employee. I am just daughter and wife. There was no Heather left. And it got really dark. And, I still have a lot of guilt about those first formative years of my children's lives because I was so in it. But, he gave me those cards, and it was what brought me back out, was starting to use them again and connect with people on the internet and in tarot card groups or whatever, just so I could practice. And 2.5 years later, here I am. And it was becoming unapologetically me, to the annoyance of everyone in my extended family. My mom still tells people I'm a life coach.
That's great.
Which, I mean, it's not totally.
Well, listen, if she has to dance around it, listen, we know there's many, many levels to the process of acceptance. But I think in a simpler narrative, what you've just described was your process to heal yourself.
Yes.
I mean, what better reflection of something positive and good and hopeful than, and I mean, here's the ironic part. Anybody, and I would just use the analogy, when I went through it, the people that cared about me were actually glad and happy to see me find what worked. You know what I mean? Isn't that, like, again, if you care about somebody, don't you want what's best for them? So it's this kind of odd little paradox where when you actually find yourself and you actually become stronger, you become healthier, all of a sudden everybody's like, what's wrong with you? And it's almost like, what, would you rather me just lay here broken and dying?
Yeah, no, they want you back in your box where you belong. They don't want you to outshine that compartment that they created for you in their brain, and that's what that is. And I always tell people, like, when they, I talk to people who are starting their own spiritual entrepreneurial businesses, or who are, doing a side hustle reading tarot, and I always say, you always got to be your own you got to be your first client, because you can't go around reading for people or trying to heal people if you are so far broken. Granted, I am not fully healed. We are never fully healed. There's nobody's like,
I was just going to say, I don't believe that process ever ends, because we experience new traumas along the way.
Right. But you have to get to a place of awareness that recognizes hurt, trauma, shame, embarrassment. You recognize when those feelings come up, and that they're not dictating your behavior or your decisions. And also, you just become more acquainted with yourself. And as you said, like, it's almost like doulaing your true self into birth, into the world. And so I always tell people they're their own first client, because where else is the best place to practice is on you. It's like, you don't even need altars and stuff. Your whole body is the original altar, because they're like, I don't have the right tools. I don't have this. I'm like,
yeah, some of that's the conditioning, the old narrative of,
right.
Spells have to be done a particular way, and you have to stand with your foot at a particular angle with the moon on and you know what? Listen, there are obviously elements within lunar cycles and seasonal elements where energy is different. Sometimes, as they say, the veil is thinner or thicker, but also it is reflective of one person's experience, and it is not the beginning nor the end per se. It's just that's their experience. Somebody, that started somewhere and somebody came up with it, and you look at it through different cultures throughout different times. There are many variations on the theme. Listen, I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to play a track, and then we're going to get back. There's a whole bunch of comments I'm going to throw at you, and then I want to talk to you a little bit about the other side that you mentioned about not only, going through the shadow element of it, but also embracing the dynamics that we've been taught to, that are bad, that really aren't actually bad. It's just how we apply them.
Sounds like a good conversation. I'll be there.
So this is Frail. This is a band that are going to be headlining October 20th over at the Foundry, and Bonded by Darkness is going to be at this show. They are the #Witch Doom. Really cool stuff. I played a little bit of it last night during our show and stuff. So I'm going to play another track. This is a cover they did for the Soundgarden tribute album, and it's their version of Head Down, which I think would be, or at least for me, musically translates a lot in what you're talking about, how those perceptions, how other people's visions of us tend to shape us into things that we're fucking not. So yeah, we had a bit of a technical thing. Thank you, Tyler and Teresa. Yeah, Heather and I just got so fucking caught up into the conversation that I actually, when I switched it over, I didn't just mute us. I fucking muted everything. So she and I are she's still live with me. So we can just, this is fucking live. You know what I mean? There's no standards that I'm not going to get fucking, like, I'm going to fire myself. Like, all right, I fucked up. I got to go now. But this is the reason I love doing this live and doing it this way, because I got people like Teresa and Tyler here like, yo, we can't hear that shit, man. What the fuck's going on? And it's like, yeah, man, I fucked up. So we're going to go back. We're going to go back around. Heather and I are going to go back and talk about the shit that we can't talk about in front of all of you. Are we going to come back? You know what? Fuck that. We're just going to talk about it now, and then we'll play the track. How does that sound?
That sounds good. I'm like, what?
Yeah, well,
I'm here.
When I dance, I tend to sometimes, I dance in circles because
and I think I just might have stepped on your foot while we were dancing.
No, that was just me because I get caught up in the energy. The same thing happens. The people who play music with me, like my drummer made a comment a couple of weeks ago. I get caught into a particular dynamic. It's like the surfing analogy. I catch a particular wave and I'm fucking riding it the whole way. I'm not fucking paying attention to anything else besides what around me. So Mark was doing some stuff and I was just digging on it. So I started fucking freestyling. And, Mark was like, okay, we're going to do these songs. Are we going to do it, this many times? Are we going to go that many times? And part of my brain is like, well, however many times we feel like doing it. And he's like, fuck you, man. Give me a number. And I was like, all right, I have to, for the sake of playing with other people, have to sometimes put limits on that. And that's what tends to come out during the show. So let's jump back again into the analogy. And you mentioned it earlier about not just so much doing the shadow work, but also embracing the things that we've been conditioned and taught that are supposedly bad, that we don't want to talk about that. You can't do that. You know what I mean? Because in many ways, I think, and you said it very well, it creates other cancerous elements within us that just grow into other things, and it creeps into every part of our fucking life.
Yeah. So I talk about embracing our monsters and, finding the power of the other. And part of what I do is it's my own personal magical practice. So if you had that question to elaborate, I call it like folklore identity magic. And I teach people to meet their vampire self or channel their werewolf so that they can heal the wounds of trauma and become the shapeshifter, to embrace the fae elements of themselves. If they're like the quirky oddball or have neurodivergence or anything like that, the fae tend to have that aspect to them, and also my dragon kind. So part of, for example, the vampire is about power and seduction. It's about controlling the narrative or the gaze or the situation and being able to be powerful in the moment. So part of what I do is teach them why we love the vampire. Of course, we all know why we love that vampire, but I also do a lot of the history and the stories of different types of vampires. But I talk about the vampire versus the human, and the human is the shadow, right? It's for the vampire that we love that they can seduce, that they command gazes, that they are so mesmerizing. But the human side of that is maybe we weaponize the sexuality. Maybe we were viewed as a harlot or a slut or whorish, or man whore, whatever it is, because we enjoyed our body too much.
Or conversely, men are judged and conditioned by the quality, quote unquote, of the particular woman, or, the old, how many notches you got on your belt or bedpost. One, it is a framework of not only dominance, but it is also, it's an ego. It is a shot of heroin to the ego. And once you've tasted it, it's fucking addictive. So, we talk about elements of addiction, drugs and alcohol, real fucking easy to look at that one and say, well, that's fucked up. But the more subtle ones, You know what I mean? Lust, gambling, food, attention. You see where I'm going? They're all reflective of those emotional dynamics, those energies that you're talking about.
Yes, and there's actually something in vampirism and in the Black Veils about indulging in healthy hedonism. So that is part of our framework of our vampire behavior, is to indulge in healthy hedonism. But it's enjoying that food, the drink, the sensuality, because the difference is, maybe weaponized sexuality is a thing, but seduction is about it's a play, it's a dance, and people who judge that, doing that as being slutty or whatever, or weaponizing your sexuality, promiscuous or whatever, but at the same time, it's because they were never allowed to do it. So it's about learning that you're hot enough to play with others, even if it is just in a seductive, flirtatious, or even friendships can be an act of seduction, or business meetings. It's about seducing people to be on your side.
Well, it's weaponized empathy. We're going to use the tools that we have. It's in every aspect of our culture and societies, but also conversely, on the other side, women are conditioned in many ways, especially from 11-year-olds doing cheerleading. You know what I mean? You have to look a particular way, you know what I mean? You have to dress a particular way, because that's what's going to give you worth, and you want to make yourself more desirable to the male, quote unquote, of the species, and then you create this fucking feedback loop where on one side of the spectrum, we've got Pornhub and OnlyFans saying, here's the illusion, but when it plays out in real time, it's just like, oh, you're a whore, or, any number of those negative, hurtful types of analogies. And it's a disconnect, because then now you have recurringly now, as we've gone generationally, less and less actual communication and more of the illusion narrative. Let's just, let's go to the club, let's get fucked up. Guys are out there. All right, look for the hottest, most fucked up chick you can find. You see where I'm going? So it's just this never ending cycle that ends up with a lot of collateral damage.
Well, that's because we also have removed seduction out of the thing. Like, seduction has always been it's more of an art than go get fucked up and find the hottest girl you can bang, or go out and bang it out, because girls have that too. We like, oh, we need to bang it out sometimes too. But it's the seduction part of it. It's about, because I've read The Art of Seduction. I am one of those people, and it talks about these historical examples using different types of seduction, how to use the rakish persona versus the coquette versus the the man eater, and you not having to be the hottest person in the world. Sometimes it's just about being you, I mean, true sexuality, and I've spoken on this, and I've had people out here have spoken about it, is really not reflective as much of that simple first layer visual dynamic, because that is, by its very nature, as you said, it's a glamour, it's an illusion. You know what I mean? When you strip off all the rest of it, no pun intended, now you're dealing with the real shit. You're dealing with energy, you're dealing with inhibitions, you're dealing with aspects of consent, you're dealing with all these other intricate layers, and it isn't just as simple as you said as the two-dimensional OnlyFans analogy. One of the great ones that I always use, and it's a running joke, guys are okay with alternate lifestyles when it's two women, when it's two lesbians having sex in front of them. But anything else that goes outside the box, if it's two guys, if it's somebody who identifies as a goat and a beaver or whatever the fuck it is, that's when they start losing their fucking minds. You know what I mean? But if it's over here, it's okay. Yeah, but that's because they don't want anything challenging or questioning their sexuality, because they know what men are, and they don't want to be a victim. Like
Well,
women are a lot of assault and stuff. So I think there's a lot of projection that goes on when it comes to homophobia and hating on the LGBTQ community. And I think there's something there that's just like, because, you know, sexuality is a spectrum. So there is probably some point where they're like, oh, that guy is kind of cute. And they're like, oh, shit. Oh, fuck. No. That's not, he's awful. He's gay. Let's stone him. No, that's not good. That's projection.
well, in the simplest aspect, unless somebody's trying to fuck you, it goes back to my earlier statement. Why is that my business? You know what I mean? Like, again, humbly, there's not enough bullshit out there already without creating new levels of imaginary bullshit. You don't have to sit there and wonder about who's fucking who or why they're doing it or all these. I mean, it's great for comedy. Like, we have our Sunday Fun Day thing over at Ed and Diane's house, and we go down some really insane fucking rabbit holes. But I believe this wholeheartedly. Humor, even dark humor, is the best way to frame some of this stuff, because it is fucking ridiculous. I loved your thing about jumping into the mouth of madness and then, you know, helping people to escape that fucking event horizon before they're actually sucked down the Contini context into fucking nowhere.
Yep. That's me. And that's because I don't mind hanging out down there because I'm already crazy. But, you know, talking about, so how this ties into embracing your monsters is, so the idea, what we were just talking about, and, you know, the internalized, basically the misogyny of what's hot, what's a slut, and the body count and all that kind. When people look at, wanting to be someone who is desired or, you know, wanted in a way, or commanding, and they see seduction, they lumped the seduction in with all that other bullshit, so they couldn't do it. And so I teach them to separate out seduction from that behavior that might be toxic and harmful, self-harming. And that's part of embracing the monster. It's finding that treasure in the darkness, you know, in the shadow. For another example is vampires have this willpower over others, or even a passion, a joie de vivre, if you will, because even though they live forever, maybe they have periods of boredom. But I always go off of Anne Rice, and you know, Anne Rice vampires, my favorite. So,
but she draws a incredibly beautiful, I think, landscape that goes deep into the cultural, the historical, and then the what if. These are the things that if we were to actually look in the shadows, that we might actually see and experience.
Correct. And that's why it's, you know, something I do a lot of work with for a lot of people, and of different ages and genders and everything. But you know, trying to learn to have fun in kind of healthy hedonism, allowing yourself to let go of who cares what everyone else thinks. You're here on this earth, in this garden, with all this stuff around you, and you're really going to spend all of it kind of just focused on what everyone else thinks about what you're doing, or who you're doing it with, or, you know, that you're not doing your work hard enough, and why you take so many vacations and you don't take any vacations, or you have no fun, or you're too much fun. It's just trying to really get people to have a little more devil in them, I guess.
But it also, listen, it goes back to the conditioning, and then, you know, to a greater degree, I think, the co-opting of some of these narratives. My brother Derek had put a comment earlier that I wanted to really throw out, because I think it's a great one. And when we were talking about witchcraft, it's actually described within the Testament as gifts given to us from God by the Holy Spirit. And he actually quoted it, 1 Corinthians, powers including clairvoyance, telepathic powers, and biokinetic. Mm-hmm. But you know, how often do you hear that actually talked about in a context within any type of Christian narrative? Right. You see where I'm going? Because yes, people would
always said, will not suffer a witch to live, which is actually a mistranslation. So.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. See, now you're reading me. You just took that instinctively. It's like, all right, let me throw Heather a really slow curveball She just stepped up and was like, yeah, I know what the fuck you're talking about. And then just nailed it.
Yeah. The
But,
pharmaca, which is just, you can't suffer like bullshit sayers to live.
well, there it
The ones
is.
that take the drugs and do that, it's more like the clairvoyance and stuff. Sure, Oracle's great, but this one very particular subset, the people who take the crazy go nuts medicine and try and tell you it's prophecy, don't do that.
Well, anything if spun in a particular way can be prophecy. Like I can pretty much I can prophesize that if I go outside right now and do a Jim Carrey, take a shit on my neighbor's lawn in front of their Ring camera, I'm going to jail. You know what I mean? It's not hard to draw those particular lines. And you and I have both seen, and, we kind of have referred to this earlier as the fake-a-witch thing. Yeah, anybody with any amount of insight and just basic fucking used car salesman skills can pick up on little nuances and things and draw a common variable.
Pattern recognition.
Like,
Yeah.
Heather, you're going to have struggles in your life. You're going to have days when it may rain. That's what the universe has told me to tell you.
Oh, thank you. I feel so validated.
Hey,
I
listen,
knew it.
if you want to talk about validation, my mother actually stepped out of the shadow. Sometimes she'll come in. Like if I say something and she just feels she has to come in here and respond, she will. And she was compelled. She actually came from under the fucking shadows. And she says being crazy has kept her from going insane. So that was an old gypsy saying, yes, you actually got it. And the oracles, Osiris, Babylon, Malice, another one of the witches within our circle, quote unquote, healthy hedonism is going to be my new favorite catchphrase for this holiday season.
Fantastic. I love that. It's going to be a good holiday season then. Enjoy.
Well, I mean, again, as you said, they're trying to strip them down because they realize they left a little bit too much fucking pagan in there. And people are starting to, be like, I actually like how this tastes. Give me more.
Yeah, we like the Santa and then all of the booze and the eggnog and all that good stuff. Like, well, don't take that away. The 12 days of Christmas, it's party. 12th night, where we have the Fae come out and do the wild hunt.
But
that's
also
all good
but
stuff.
on the same end, you have a horror story like Rudolph, which really is about an outcast reindeer who basically gets fucking gaslit into, okay, now that we need you, Rudolph, come lead our sleigh. And it really is the ultimate oppression moment. It's just like, yeah, we don't fucking know you. We don't like you until we can't see where the fuck we're going. And it's just like, oh, Rudolph, please come see us. And we were joking about it Sunday. And just like, imagine how, that story really probably played out. Rudolph's like, you know what? Go fuck yourself. Okay, you all treated me like assholes. You know what I mean? Now you want the schnoz. Now you need my help. You know what? Go get lost in the fucking fog. See how all the little kids love you the next morning then. See, I think that would have been a better tale, a better teaching moment. Yeah,
that's totally like the American bootstraps underdog bullshit that story's about, really. Like you're supposed to suck it up for the big corporate man anyway. If it's what you provide, that's all your value is. And if it's a big red nose and you don't have a need for that, then you have no value and you should just go die.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's all fine and dandy till nobody comes around and picks up the garbage in New York City for 2 weeks.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, again, it's just like Buffy sitting in the tower is like, look at those peasants there. And then, 2 weeks later when the garbage stink, and it's just like, why aren't they doing what they, and it's just like, no, fuck you. You go clean up your own garbage. Poor Shia. Shia had an experience today. She went out to the park to kind of reconnect with nature. And she ran into a guy who was doing some photography, and she's a photographer. So they were talking. And he's taking pictures of this girl, and it's very obvious this girl was in performance mode. They would just like, are my tits big enough? Is my ass angled the correct way? And he's trying to be a professional. It's like, okay, this is what I'm getting paid to do. But through this process, she went through 3 bottles of water, and Shia just sat there and watched it. And she just tossed them into what is supposed to be a nature preserve, basically, for all intents and purposes. It's one of the few places we have fucking around here that it isn't completely co-opted with shit. And her mentality was, as she's primming and propping for her photo shoot, It's just let me throw some plastic to go with the natural scenery here. And it's just the audacity sometimes people will put out there while framing themselves into these, again, imaginary illusions of not only superiority, but like you said, beauty, sexuality, that weaponized empathy. Look at me. I look better than you.
Yeah, the influencers. I have mixed feelings about them because while a lot of that kind of stuff and like the lavender fields in, I think it was Spain or France, that they had to close because they were getting trampled and things like that. Or you mean
like Gwyneth Paltrow's vagina goop? We can go there. Okay, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. See, her vagina goop though is harmless, relatively harmless, unless you're using it. Don't use it. But don't use it.
It's okay to observe from a distance. Just don't actually open the lid.
But don't, like, I'm thinking of the influencers that go and they trample these beautiful nature areas or people's private property because they're trying to get the photo ops, and they're like, they've had to shut down places in New Hampshire because of these people trampling on
endangered plant life and shit. Right, exactly.
Wildflowers and or even people's front yards because they just have no qualms. It's okay, like, one or two people doing it, but then it becomes a thing, and it's so destructive, and they don't care, and they keep coming until people have to, police have to get involved. It's just too much. But at the same time, influencers have often brought awareness to a lot of issues, and
they can listen. It's a double-edged sword.
It is. That's why I have a mixed feeling about
it's
them.
context.
And I'm like, but I'm not going to lie. If I was offered the job to be an influencer, I would totally take it.
So what
if anyone wants to be,
what would be the first thing you would bring to the table as an influencer?
Oh, I would totally want to do some kind of, I don't know, fang beauty bling or something, they have the tooth gems, but for fangs. It would be awesome. If someone has that.
See now you're starting to edge back toward that blood drinking thing.
Well, I have fangs.
But listen, if it's consensual, let's be honest about it. What two people do, and again, I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole with this, but if we're going to be honest about it, any level of intimacy to certain degrees is going to involve body fluids. So, one body fluid versus another body, I think, again, we're cherry picking and say, well, this is acceptable, but.
Oh, no. In the vampire community, they're sanguine vampires. They are blood drinkers, but they don't attack people. They have partners and donors and consent and blood tests and all of that. That is all very much the norm. Some are just, fetishists, but others are legit blood drinkers. That's how they consume the energy. And then sometimes you can start as one and become another because of reasons. So there's that, or go the other way because sometimes there's a partner or someone who just really wants to give that to you, which is also a beautiful thing. But
it's context, right? Again, it's all about the context.
Yeah. All
right. So listen, let's take a break. Let's jump to some music. This music you'll actually get to hear. I won't fuck it up this time. So I'm actually going to mute us first. I'm going to slow click to the other. I want to say hi to my sister, Monica Munistera. She's another one of the pagans from the circles and stuff like that. She dances with a lot of the witchcraft and stuff like that. And I always try and make it a point when people stop on by to say, hey, what's up? How you doing? So I'm going to flip it up because there are two tracks that I definitely want to make sure I do not forget to play. They're both videos. The first one I'm actually going to go to is a track by Hollowell because I know my sister Teresa is still hanging out and she's going to be performing with us Saturday, October 7th over at the House of Guitars for the WRFC Rock Show. So I'm going to play No Wing. No wings. Again, two fucking words, Wolf. You can't even. So I'm sorry, Teresa. I'm not capable of saying no wings. See, I can say it now because it's a comedy sketch, but it's actually a really cool video. These guys, let me tell you, all joking aside, really, really powerful band, really good people. Really honored that, not only are they engaging within the stuff musically, but they've become very supportive of the community, which is really, again, the purest definition of strength in numbers. Jen brought us together, these circles, and you said it, there's an evolution happening. People are coming together from different ends of the spectrum, and they're finding this common element within energy, be it magic, be it music, be it vampirism, be it shadows, whatever words you put on it, they still are just different translations of the same thing. Yes, and as Teresa says, wings is a hard one.
It's a hard one.
It's just like, yeah, well, welcome to another of the long list of my fuck ups. So here we go. We're going to mute us, and then we're going to go to No Wings, and then we're going to go to Frail with Head Down. So hang around, enjoy a little bit of music and video, and then we'll be back.
They don't condone. Now I know
So yeah, that was Frail and their cover of Soundgarden's Head Down that they did for the Soundgarden tribute album. Got a lot of really good reviews. And again, personally, I'm a big fan of Soundgarden, and I really appreciate what Gwen and the rest of the band did with that. They didn't try to mimic Chris Cornell. They didn't try and copy it. They took it, and in the true spirit of, you know, a memorial track, they gave their interpretation of it. And I think that it takes courage to do that, because it's easy to just follow what everybody else does. And it's the same analogy that I'll use with Hollowell, except they've gone completely into this. We're going to take our experiences, our perceptions, our thoughts, whatever you want to call them, and we're going to put it out there in our way. And most of the bands in this Rochester area, and Teresa knows what I'm talking about, they've all kind of slanted to the cover tune element. There's not a lot of bands out there that are doing original music because the clubs don't want to book original bands. They want party bands that bring college kids out there to get fucking drunk. Pure and simple. They don't give a shit. If you're going to bring people in there and they're going to get drunk, you could sing Scooby-Doo all fucking night long. It's not about quality. It's not about anything. But both of these bands, Frail and Hollowell, Bounded by Darkness, and all the others that I do promote, and a lot of them, are through GEM and the Rockin' Oddities Con, they are not afraid to do it their way. They're putting it out there honestly, and none of them are getting rich by it, but it's not stopping them. And that takes a lot of courage. And I think in a lot of ways it takes a lot of courage to do what you do, Heather, because this is not something that there's a lot of. I mean, obviously, you can quote the Anne Rice analogy, and there are little circles of it, but you're taking it to the next level. You are literally kind of like Lestat. You're going on stage and saying, you know what? Fuck you. I'm telling the story. Come and get me.
Well, yeah, that's, I think, one of my first TikTok videos I made was come out wherever you are.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, yes, I basically have taken this vampire witch identity and who I am and just me and just kind of throwing myself headfirst at wherever I can. And Jem has been so kind as to be like, girl, you are doing something really important here and putting me where I needed to be a lot of the time. So I wouldn't be here without her. So thank you, Jem. Love you. But also it is kind of about, something bigger. I am obviously not the only vampire witch. There are many of us, and some that are actually public figures as well. Not many, but they're there. But I am very influenced. I was encouraged to come out and do my my thing by the witches in Salem, the vampire witches from Maison Vampire. So shout out to there. If you're ever in Salem, they do readings and tarot and astrology and host amazing events. And Vamp Fangs is their store. So shameless plug for them too.
Now you're allowed to do that, I hear. That's what we're all about.
But they're a small business in Salem, and they have been. So a little bit of my story, a little background. So when I was 17, I met Father Sebastian, who is the head of Strigoi and creator of all of that, the Black Veils and the Endless Night productions and everything. And he made my fangs. So I am a saber-tooth brood of 2009. Jesus. 20. Oh my God. I'm trying not to age myself too much.
As a vampire,
1997.
Right? Time becomes a blur, right? You know what I mean?
Because in 2003 is when I went to the city. So that was a few years later. I went to Manhattan and was going to musical theater school, and I was involved in the nightclubs there. So I was actually, I think I went to one at Club Mother before they closed and moved to Club Rare, and was in the scene with the vampire community as it was in its adolescence. And it was everything you would expect from an adolescent vampire community. It was awesome. There was a lot of cool experiences, but there was also a lot of reasons why I left the community and kind of went rogue back on my own. And much love to all of them still, because they are all still awesome. And I, went back, grew up, did my thing. And then it was in Salem that they're like, hey, it was a tarot gathering for tarot card people, and they're like, vampire witches, what is a vampire witch? And I'm like, I know exactly what that is. I have to go see this. And it's a Strigoi. Alexis Foray is a vampire priestess there, and June Jennings, who's a vampire witch. And I was just like talking to them, and I'm like, oh, you are everything that I thought the vampire community was going to be back then. And she's like, new wave vampirism. And I'm like, I will come back. I am back in. And as I said before, everything I do, I kind of, when I go in, I'm like all the way in, Leo rising. So I came back. I reread all the books. I dug out my old notes. I connected to the current, and I did my I basically reinitiated myself, because I buried my old sobriquet, which was Lenore Tepesh, Don't Laugh. And you're probably the only podcast that will ever hear that, so you're special.
Well,
I buried her.
But I'm also one of the only people that actually knows that Castlevania reference, too.
Oh, it wasn't from Castlevania. It was because I was a friggin' book nerd.
Well,
I love
Edgar
Allan Poe and Bram Stoker.
Well, again, that's also the same. See, when the way you said that, my mind translated, because they use that in the first Castlevania series that Netflix did as Dracula's wife.
Yeah, so my name predates that.
See, you went even older. See, but again, that's reflective of your journeys and stuff. See, I'm talking modern pop culture. You're dancing back in 90s, 2000, early aughts. Yeah.
But I buried her, and I reemerged as Heather Salome, but Heather's my given name, so I still don't know what my sobriquet first name is. I just know that I got a second one, and they're like, go with it. And I'm like, okay. So when I came back and was doing my cards, the tarot reading, I was like, no, I'm not going to do the jump in on the love and light bullshit. I am a shadow worker. This is what I do, because this is my gift, and it has been my gift. Always. It's been a thing from childhood, where my mother, single mom raising me, would pull me aside and be like, Heather, stop taking on everybody else's problems. It's going to kill you. And because I would get destroyed by the weight. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And after I turned 17, I figured out what she was talking about, because I was literally trying to consume everybody's problems, and then also making problems so I could consume them. So, being the shit stirrer, so to speak, that kind of psychic vampire, the bad one.
But it's also reflective.
What teenager isn't one of those?
There wasn't any tools for you. There wasn't any knowledge. There wasn't anything to guide you So in a natural instinct type of way, it's no different than, if you're lost in the woods and you haven't eaten for 3 days, you're probably going to rip a fucking rabbit's throat out and drink its blood just because you don't want to die in the moment. You see where I'm going? So we translate these things based on the context, the situation. So as a young adult, you know what I mean, needing that, not understanding that what was actually really happening, your first instinct was, well, if it wasn't there naturally, you're going to create it because you needed it.
Yeah. So it's true. And it was something that I needed to come to terms with, because I also was dealing with my own traumatic stuff. Because I was assaulted at age 8, and then again at age 17. And the 17-year-old one was so brutal that I actually repressed it and only rediscovered it a few years ago. But I had such inward turned stuff that I was I tried to commit suicide, and the only reason I survived was my mom was able to pick me up with one hand and like throw me in a car and get me to the hospital. So I had that darkness in me that was like I couldn't even handle. So she was right, which brings me to another thing where I didn't have my parents were muggles. They did not do magic. They did not condone in magic. My dad was Catholic at the time. He's not anymore. And my mom is a Baptist of some variety. But either way, not taught anything.
Not exactly conducive to vampirism.
No. And so I thought, I don't know why they had me. I'm just like, woof. I don't know where I came from in that family. I'm just their karma for something they did awful.
Well, see,
but
listen, humbly, I'm going to have to actually stand up against that and say, it's not like you were some fucking hellspawn that was summoned as, punishment for some perceived sin. I think it's to some degrees, and this has always been the narrative within magic, okay, that it doesn't always manifest itself generationally. There are certain aspects, you know what I mean? It went from my mother to me and to my son. So there's a definitive correlation that I can see, but I've seen it jump in other aspects.
Oh, well, yeah.
And some of it also, too, depending upon their conditioning, their experiences from before you were even part of the equation, they probably did have it. And
I was going to say, that was the other part of it, is they are absolutely highly intuitive people.
Right. It probably got stomped out in the narrative between fucking religion and social conditioning.
Yep, my mom views her intuitive pings as common sense, and then gets annoyed when no one else can pick up what she's putting down because it's common sense. And I'm like, no, Mom, that's intuitive. You're just picking up things. You're not. There's no. Oh, yeah, no. She would just be like, well, that's common sense. Everyone should know how to do that or do this. And I'm like, nope.
Listen, I have a running joke. I wouldn't trust most people to make a fucking peanut butter sandwich, let alone have this kind of conversation or explore elements, be it philosophy or history or, metaphysical versus, getting into some of that quantum energy, twisty type of stuff, or actually have a fucking serious question, a serious conversation about, the dynamics of sexuality, misogyny. My mother says it skipped her mother because she feared it.
Yeah. That makes sense. And I'm pretty sure I didn't meet any of my grandparents. They all died before I was born. So like I literally just grew up with my mom. I saw my uncle sometimes. So I had a very small, not a long extended family. But she is very intuitive. And it's just, I know from work I've done that I keep picking this damn family. and it's like, why do I keep doing it? And it's kind of like the microcosm of the macrocosm, because what I'm supposed to do in the world is also what I do in my family. And that is, if you read tarot, I am a tower moment. And anyone who's around me experiences tower moments. So I apologize in advance, but like, I am the catalyst that pushes them where they're supposed to go. That's why I'm so oddly different from them. And it's happened every time that I've been in this, and I keep coming back because for some reason it's this healer in me that always sees the greatest good in everybody. I'm like, ha! But I'm determined. And then it's also kind of what I do. I'm here to be a tower moment. And yes, it's not necessarily the nice thing to say, but it's also, we cannot build until we level what no one
It's honest.
deserves.
And if you're going to lead by example, especially in the narrative being a parent, what else can you really do? Because everything else is bullshit. You already know that. You've already experienced it. Why? And you and I talked about this when we were doing the music tracks. In what reality would we want to condemn our children to repeating the same bullshit? I mean, if they're, it just doesn't even, you want to talk about the amount of fucking madness. To me, that is the ultimate madness. If you know this is a generational aspect or a trauma or a conditioning or any number of these analogies, how can you willingly bullshit your own children? You know what I mean? And I didn't understand it when I was younger, but, it's one of the things I've grown to love and respect about my mother, and I've tried to maintain that in my relationship with my son. But it really is a damned if you do, damned if you don't. So you either pretend and then you put everybody else around you at risk because you're not being honest, and more importantly, you're not being honest with yourself. But once you step out on that limb, you're in the fucking breeze then, because everybody else is like, they don't want it. People don't really want truth a lot of the times either. I think that's also the other side of the narrative. I'm sure you get those situations where, people will come to you and they're like, okay, yeah, I want to explore my shadow. I want to look at this. And then you hit them with, well, this is where you have to kind of take responsibility. Oh, no, fuck that. It's somebody, you know what I mean? That's want to run the other direction.
It's definitely, it's been a lot. Part of why I'm leading with this vampire witch thing, and not just me, because I could be whatever, but is because those wrong people were sitting in my chair, the people who weren't ready to hear it, the people who didn't want to hear it, the people who just wanted to be like light and fluffy validation, or heard like he's not cheating on you, he's going to come back, all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, get out of my fucking chair. No, I'm going to tell you what you need to do to get better and choose better.
I'm going to take this moment to do a cheap plug as well too. The human condition, they like to kind of get up there, and they want to get close. They want to look at the oddities. They want to smell it and see, well, maybe we can touch it real quick. You know what I mean? And then they run the fuck away.
I dare you to touch it and run away.
So Jim has pretty much created the Rockin' Oddities to basically bring all the fucking freaks and hippies and fucking witches and snake charmers and everything else into one big explosive moment. I'm not sure Saratoga Springs is going to recover from this. I'm going to be honest with you.
It's going to be amazing.
I mean, it is. But, you know how these things go. All of a sudden, you get a bunch
Tower moment.
Well, you get a bunch of witches and pagans together. They're having a good time and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, you know what I mean? The fucking Inquisition shows up again.
Oh, I think we could have some words with them this time.
See, now that's spoken like a true vampire.
Yeah, I would like to have some words.
So there,
and dinner.
That does open up a thing, because I have this, and I've been very vocal about it. I have disdain for the human equation sometimes. I look at the shit that people do. I look at the shit that they say, and I'm just like, what the fuck? Really? This is the best you have to offer? And I struggle with it, sometimes. Thank God I don't have to dance it in the professional circles as much as I used to, because it was killing me. It was absolutely fucking killing me. And,
that will actually like rip your soul and stomp you in the ground. And I think that events like this Rockin' Oddities Con and having a darker themed stuff, you're going to see it. It is more accepted. I mean, even having come up from where I was and being accepted with such open arms into the community of upstate New York, which was shocking to me. I was like ready to just be on my own and blinders, I don't see you. You're not annoying me. Watch me rise as I set everything on fire. But they're ready for it. It now is the time, because as we said before, there is some big changes happening in global and national and even on our bigger upstate level. And I think that everybody's ready for the change. It's because everyone's done with the bullshit. They really are. Also, too,
because we're changing the narrative that not everything that is quote unquote dark necessarily means it's bad or evil. You see where I'm going?
No.
Again, it's a lot of this
Yeah.
co-opted imagery. Words
We
have
need
been
to start
superimposed.
addressing it
Right.
head on. Yeah.
You know, and
Bring
again,
it into the light with it. Bring it into the light. We got to bring it to the table, feed it cookies, give it the hugs it never had. And
see, no, I don't do the cookies and the hugs thing.
Oh,
No.
yeah. See, I do.
No.
But only the people I like.
No. Mental evisceration. That's the part I enjoy the most. I love it when somebody wants to step out into the breeze and just kind of like try and like play the Nazi card or some
It's
other
about
fucking,
balance.
and then it's just like,
balance.
oh, fresh meat. Yes. But that's just my
love
way.
a good evisceration every now and then myself, but you know, sometimes you need to balance that. It's like a balanced diet.
Well, see, you can say that as a vampire. As a wolf, I kind of have a little bit of like, well, you know, this is what this.
You're like
you know,
dinner.
listen, if you're fucking stupid enough to walk into the woods in the dark and then, you know, try and, you know, pull that, you know, tough guy fucking, and you know what? Play fucked up games, win fucked up prizes. You know what I mean? and again, I use the Anne Rice analogy. You know, I look at it as the context of the evildoers. I do try and support and love as best as I can where it is applicable, because we both know for some people, this world ain't never going to be right. There's nothing you're going to say. There's nothing you're going to do. They're going to hold the bullshit line until there's nothing left. And the aspect of collateral damage really means the rest of us are going to pay the fucking price. So it becomes a line now of, you know, how far are the rest of us going to let some of you, I'm not saying necessarily anybody who's listening, but if the swastika fits, hey, you know.
Well, when I say we invite them to the table, feed them cookies, I'm meaning people need to start looking at their own shit. That's more of that, where you nurture the darkness within to start integrating it, because denying that it's there is not serving you, because that's where people go and lean into Nazi behavior and, you know, propaganda and hating on people and fear and hate and fueling that and instigating it in others and trying to start a fire so they so they can get away from their own shadow. It's like they're trying to burn everything down so there's no shadows. The more light they add, they think there's going to be less shadows, but the more light they add,
this is the beautiful thing about communication. See, you put a context out there, and I automatically assumed it was like, oh, you know, some nice fresh baked chocolate.
Oh no, I will eviscerate the person.
If you had led in with shit cookies, I would have been like, or as my mother said, feed some of them poison cookies.
Mm-hmm.
Words, spell, you know what I mean? Language is the underlying framework, the weave, if you will, to kind of stitch some of this together. And that's why it's so important to have these conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. Because no one has a room at the table for someone who's so steeped in hate that they cannot. Because as I said, they are just setting shit on fire, trying to get it bright enough that they don't see any of their own shadows and shit. And those people need to be eviscerated. Those are not the people who come to the table.
Now again, we have to do the disclaimer these days.
Not literal.
Right. We're not saying that we're advocating going and literally eviscerating people. We're talking about a mental evisceration, which is much more so, but listen, I think it's actually much more enjoyable. You know what I mean? To watch somebody squirm in their own pile of shit really has some comical overtones to it. You know, when you think about it, granted, sometimes once you open that door, you know what I mean, everybody's getting covered with shit, but if somebody's bringing shit to the party, well, you know, as my brother Ed Contini was said, somebody's got to fucking do it, right?
Yes. Yeah, and that is all fair, because needs to be done. And you know, if they want to sit in that hatred, they need to be chased back to the little hole they crawled out of. You know, they don't need to be spouting it everywhere and trying to grow. And that was the problem. It seems like, you know, with that sad election we had.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about
it allowed it to become to the light a little too much, and that's what I think everyone's sick of, and it's going to go back, and we got to
we are now living in a dynamic where we can't even agree whether or not the earth is flat or round anymore. We're back to the flat earth argument and so many of these things. And it is, again, if you look at it historically, it is reflective of desperation. The old ways aren't working. People are becoming less and less tolerant, less accepting. You know what I mean? So, as you said, there's shit that's building. Things are shifting, and they're shifting in ways that really threaten the established status quo. Now, my mother here, she's not afraid to go to it, and she said it. She's like, no Cheetos.
No Cheetos.
No Cheetos.
No Cheetos.
So
no.
if you worship a Cheeto god, you know, don't be surprised, you know, if you wake up if you wake up in Cheeto hell.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's a whole bunch of ways we can paint that fucking analogy, but you know, I also believe, again, I take this from the George Carlin context, that, you know, they want to keep us separated. They don't want an educated population. They don't want people having conversations like we're doing. They don't want people to do like what Jem's doing, or what Shia does, or what Oracles does, or what my mother does, or Teresa does. You know what I mean? They want us to just be good little fucking drones and feed their machines. They don't really care, right. You know, because again, as a society that actually cared, we wouldn't have these issues and these problems. We wouldn't still be having debates how to make sure that children don't go hungry, or to make sure that people have adequate medical
fundamental right,
you know? Or that, you know, we're not polluting things to the degree that, you know, we don't have clean water to drink. You know, we take a lot of things for granted also too within the scope of Western culture, that for as fucked up as we think it is, there are places in the world where it's even more fucked up.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, we got to start. It's kind of like the oxygen mask on first. So I always tell people, because, you know, you start thinking of the global stuff and the big picture, and compassion fatigue is a real thing, and it's exhausting. And, you know, it can get you in a really bad mental state, because I get there, because I feel deeply and I care deeply, and I am ready for such a fundamental change, systemic overhaul, everything. But you think about it, it's like, it just seems so daunting and overwhelming. So I always tell people, I read an analogy somewhere where they said it's like a giant ball of yarn that got all tangled and messed up, and it's just hanging over everything. So the only thing you can do is tug on the little string that's by you, and hopefully wherever anyone else is, they're tugging on their own strings until we can loosen it up and loosen up the knot and eventually straighten it out. So
I like that analogy. We have to repair the weave.
Yep, we absolutely do. And we don't have to, when you start to get so crazy in your head that it's just so big that there's nothing we can do. It's think local, think small, think by you, think what you can do near you and what you can do feasibly in your life, like whatever change you make, or even if it's a donation, or if it's changing a behavior, or if it's learning, deconstructing some belief that you didn't know you felt, you know, it's like those little things will add up. And that's part of why I do what I do too, because that's all shadow shit. You know, even you don't have to go and join any like protests in the streets that you might get arrested unless you absolutely want to, because I would love to, but you know, my kids would. Well,
I
would be there if I could, but you know, so you're
finding balance between, you know, what you need to do and obviously to some degrees what you want to do. And that's, you know, part of the sacrifice. And I think that's a great testament to the fact that you are working both ends of it. You're a parent. You recognize that you have young children. So you're putting their well-being, their priority ahead of that, which ultimately is what you have to do. I don't think anybody should fault a person for doing that, but
absolutely not.
It's also, you know, listen, it's about context. You know, they will, as they grow, present their own aspects. They'll develop their own things. And, you know, this is not going to be something that happens today and tomorrow. So you're not going to miss the party, sister. That's not going to fucking happen.
That I know, but the whole idea is I'm telling people that when it feels like that, there's always something you can do. It doesn't matter if it's even just as small as changing your own mindset or changing one small behavior. Like, you're worried about the environment. What I did was I went from, I don't use fabric softener, like the canisters anymore. I make my own. That was back when I was in the throes of postpartum, and I'm like, there's really nothing I can do, and the environment it's just, So I changed that. And, from there it's evolved into other things. But, you always can find something, and let that be the light. Let that be your guidepost. Like, I can do this today, and this is going to make a difference in my life and my mindset. Just find the little things, because the big shit's going to get done eventually, and you can write onto that big shit, but first do the little stuff. And also doing your shadow work will also help.
Great way to do it. All right, listen, we're gonna cut to a quick little promo. I'm going to be doing a special show Monday, October 30th, right after the Rockin' Oddities Con when we come back. I put together a little promo. I'm going to do something that I haven't seen anybody do on radio in a few, just kind of honor the old spirit. So I'm going to pop that. And I also have the new remastered version from Phantom High of Black Divine. Really powerful track. Peril went back in there, changed some stuff. As musicians are known to do, we'll put something out there. I have a track that I've been working on, and I'm just finally getting around to fucking releasing the thing, because I've had to go back at least a dozen times, because every time I listen to it, I find something else that I'm just like, you know what? I could do that better. And it's just this never ending fucking process that, I hear imaginary shit. Like, I had Shy and my son listen to it, and they're like, it's fucking fine. It's great. I'm like, well, what about that? No, like, I'm like, the letter A doesn't sound like the letter A. And they're like, fuck that. Nobody's going to give a shit about the letter A. But this is what we do as musicians, performers, creators, artists, vampires. I'm sure you dance that same struggle. Where's the balance between the theatrical and obviously the magic, what you actually do, and then obviously everybody else's perceptions. So we're going to jump out real quick. I'm going to mute us first again so I don't fuck up, hopefully.
Nice and slow.
Yeah, nice and slow. Yeah, well, you know what? The running
Let
joke.
us slow dance.
Listen, I'm able to use my paws to actually use a fucking mouse, so it's a fucking miracle I can even do this, let alone. It's almost not my show if I don't fuck up. That's kind of the running joke too. Because I don't script it. I don't come in here with welcome to Bob's House of Boredom. Because it's not real. It isn't.
Right.
Now, granted, it makes it a little bit off the wall sometimes. I've had people be like, hey, we were just having a conversation about this. Now we're talking about licking beavers' assholes. Because we actually had a conversation one night because somebody brought up the context about how artificial vanilla and artificial raspberries originally came from these anal glands on beavers and shit like that. So I took it and were like, well, that means that somebody somewhere at some point went out,
the beavers
found a beaver, and just, looking at that beaver, the beaver's looking at them. I'm assuming it's a guy, because I think this is the kind of thing only a guy would do, just because of the beaver analogy. I mean, I have to throw the misogyny in there, else the joke doesn't work. But he's looking at the beaver's looking at him, and he just, slowly turns it around, and he's like, that actually smells good. And then the next human analogy, well, if it smells good, we got to fucking taste it. So somewhere, somehow, at some point, not unlike Joe Smith finding Jesus in the woods, somebody found artificial vanilla in a beaver's asshole. So
oh my gosh.
Take what you need and leave the rest behind. But listen, somewhere, I mean, how else could it have happened? That wasn't like a formula somewhere. I don't think like the Mayans were like, if you really need good flavoring, go check out the beaver. Somebody somewhere figured this shit out. And it probably wasn't in a way that, at least it wouldn't be appropriate on FM radio. But,
or somebody told a colonial colonist to lick a beaver's butt as a joke, and they didn't know.
Right? There you go. See, now I love that. Somewhere the natives are like, white man be stupid. Give him beaver to lick. And somebody ran out there. Or listen, it could even be the narrative. Somebody somewhere, it's like, all right, let's just create some bullshit, and let's see how many people run with it. And me being the fucking idiot that I am, I'm like, hey, guess what? Artificial vanilla comes from a beaver's ass. Now, I did a little bit of research, and there is some truth to it. But I like the comedy part better because, only human beings would create a context where somehow a beaver's asshole would come into our food system. I don't know. I these are the things I think about that keep me awake at night. I don't know about you.
That's going to keep me awake tonight. Because, yeah. So thank you for that one.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. Listen, I always want to leave people with gifts and stuff like that. This is usually, this is usually the part, like, again, if I got 20 people listening, it'll drop down to 3. They're like, oh God, he's going there again. We got to run the fuck away. It's just like,
on the beaver assholes.
Right. We got vampires, we got beaver assholes, we got psychotic wolves, we got witches. It's a fucking freak show. But yeah. I like it. I like the dynamic. I love the people that have been, coming into our lives. Jem really has been a big, I guess, catalyst in some of it, at least in these aspects. I would not have met you otherwise because, listen, the world is so big and so many other fucking things that are distracting us. And don't take offense to this. I didn't wake up and be like, I think I want to go exploring, looking for vampire witches. Do you know what I mean? It's just not the type of thing that you usually start. But now that I know, I can't unknow. And since I'm going to be there that weekend and stuff like that, I definitely have to sit in the fucking chair. I have to now because I need to know.
Yeah, well, that's awesome.
And then I have to come back and talk about it, and then I have to compare it to beaver assholes. Right.
Yeah, okay. I promise I don't have any flavoring anywhere on my body. So.
No, listen, I know better than... it's bad, and I know this dynamic with witches. You're a vampire witch, so it's like double trouble.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like a single barrel shotgun is terrifying enough. You're a fucking sawed-off double barrel shotgun. Just like, get too close and find out what happens. See, my mother raised me better than that.
1700s musket. We don't know where it'll go.
Oh, Jesus, like a black powder.
Black powder, like, yeah. It's more like that.
Yes, collateral damage for everybody. Shy has a little thing. We play a lot of D&D. It's the family game that we play here with the boys and stuff like that. We've been doing it for years. And she loves playing like these mystical kind of like, type of characters and stuff. But she always has this dark underlying necromancy type of thing. So she'll play like this light and loving kind of celestial character that burns villages down. Because
I love that.
They don't mind taking a little damage, right? I mean, it's all in the spirit of, love and light, right?
Among friends.
So, all right. So, yeah, we're going to cut to the promo. Then we're going to jump to Phantom High. And are you cool keeping it going? Listen, I got do you have a curfew? I don't have a curfew.
I don't have a curfew.
Fuck it. We're going to keep going. All right. So we're going to clip and we're going to do that. And then we'll be back. Hey everyone, it's the Old Wolf inviting you to join me Monday, October 30th, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for a Halloween special episode of the Music and Magic Show where I'm going to rebroadcast the original Mercury Theater production of H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds as directed and narrated by the one and only Orson Welles. Again, only on Rochester Free Radio, WRFZ 106.3 FM LP. So yeah, welcome back. That was a little bit of Ayla Huff performing as Me, Myself, and I. Her track, Let Go. She's also going to be performing October 7th over at the House of Guitars with us. Hollowell is going to be playing the RFC House Band, which includes myself and a bunch of others. Brian Judah's Days End, the Mick and Mac Show, and Gary Mara's Skyway, all coming out to support the cause. So at the request of my mother, and quote unquote, in an effort to change the Bieber conversation, it's clear enough out to see Jupiter. Thank you, Mom. Message received. So, Jupiter.
I appreciate that. So Jupiter.
Yeah, I'm going to serve up Jupiter to you and see what you do with it.
Oh, it's Jupiter. Jupiter is expansive and, abundant. I don't know. What did you want me to do with Jupiter?
I don't know. It was just really just a kind of one of those bailout moments. We had to make a left turn.
Like a ball?
Well, it was like the left turn at Albuquerque. We're just like, okay, we're definitely not in Pismo Beach anymore, and we have to, again, for the sake. To be honest, I don't want to the next time. My mother's still viable. Like the next time I go down there, I don't want to get my ass fucking kicked because I didn't pay attention. She was just I
appreciate the segue because we had a heavy between conversation there. So I was like, I'm glad for the giggle.
Oh, you mean the part where we were talking about Father Flanagan diddling little boys in the confessional?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So then we.
Yeah.
Well, fuck. That was.
See, they've heard me do that one before. That's another running joke. I always pull Father Flanagan out of the fucking closet to be like, hey, remember when they're selling you that fucking nice, pretty version of heaven, they're forgetting to tell you about the small print, which includes the priest fucking your children.
Yes, and bring him out for a little verbal flogging.
Flogging.
It was always good to have a Flanagan in the closet you could bring out for a little verbal flogging and, as needed. To segue away from beavers.
Well, listen, sometimes we have to, and I talk about this, and I own this. I will use certain dynamics of things to create a brighter picture. Some of it is the shock, obviously, because people tend to not pay attention, unless you're like, hey, listen to fuck, you know what I mean? So you have to sometimes shake them out of their apathy to be like, hey, there's something going on. But also, too, and you said it, I think aptly, some of it's deflection, because you can't really talk about these things in their pure horror because they are just so fucked up. You know what I mean? So how do you really have that conversation without it just becoming this black hole of just despair and just like, oh God, just something else horrible to just be like, well, what's the point? But there is a point. We can change the narrative.
And we can address it and also, make space for the black hole depths of despair for the people who need to have those while we are here in entertainment. So lifting it up and then, tongue in cheek and kind of taking its power away is one way that humor works to heal. It's kind of like the thing you're scared of and the thing, because that's a parent's worst fear is anything like that or anything.
Definitely one of those top 10 lists. Yeah, and we both say like the child abduction. We were sharing that out through Gem. We had some fucking idiot up here who just not only decided he was going to grab a little child, but then he was going to fucking walk on over to the parent's house and leave them a ransom note with his fingerprints on it. Now, thank God he was fucking stupid.
I was going to say, thank God he was
right. You know what I mean?
Idiot.
But in the same analogy, this is the fucking world we live in. And instead of focusing on these dynamics, how are these fucking characters allowed to just float around? But we're worried about who's sucking whose dick. That's more of a threat. You know what I mean? Than, child predators just fucking roaming around, aimlessly, looking for victims.
Yeah. And we, that's the systemic problems that we are going to be, I think that'll be exposed as we learn more about this person and the nuances. But I think that there's a lot of it's almost like systemic support for allowing these people to continue to go and abduct children without any, and no one noticing the red flags because we always get the postscript,
right. He was misunderstood.
I wish we had seen the red flag sooner
right.
because he did X, Y, and Z and we didn't think he would. Yeah. And it's always, oh, we never saw the red flag. Yeah, but now there's all this line to be hindsight 2020, but at the same time, everyone was seeing the same red flags.
Well, listen, again, sometimes a duck is just a fucking duck. We like to try and make excuses on things. We like to try and kind of gloss them over. But to some degrees, it's also a state of apathy because you see so much of it. So much of it is just pushed at us. It's shoved down our throats. You know, you wake up in the morning, it's like, hey, here's some new horror with your coffee. You know what I mean? Or somebody is just talking some absolutely ridiculously insane shit. And we're giving it airtime. You know what I mean? We're like, okay, you have a point there, Mr. Nazi. And it's like, no, fucking Nazis don't have points. We already fought a fucking war for this. Like, why are we even having the conversation? And again, my mother made a really good point about it. She and I were talking a couple of weeks ago. In the generational aspect, her generation fought, you know, through the civil rights movement and through some of these social problems that we had. And even she admitted that a lot of her generation became complacent. They thought that they had crossed the bridge, when in reality, you know, a lot of it just went underground, just waiting like a cicada to come back out, you know, 20 some odd, 30 some odd years later to just fucking wreak havoc. And we didn't have any of the defensive systems in place to really combat that. And then you also, and we talked about this, the narrative of disinformation, you know, people just go out there and say, you know, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, we're saying blah, 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 but we're not trying to, you know, we're not trying to get you to sign a Scientology contract for 10,000 years and 85% of your salary. We don't have we don't have a communion basket going around being like, yes, give me more money so that way I can build a better torture chamber to abuse your children, or any number of these fucked up analogies. Because you're right, especially if you look
the lobby, the senator that I feel will do my bidding. Well,
but here's the thing: they're all in the pockets of the corporations.
Right,
it's not about anything. We know, even from just some of the surface scratching, that most car companies, if not all car companies, have a policy, basically, and it's a mathematical formula that actuaries come up with, between profit margin and fatalities. That until X amount of people die from our fuck up, you know what I mean?
Well, that's
until it actually affects the stockholders end of it. We're just going to hold. We don't give a fuck. We're going to just send it out there. There's an acceptable number of people to die. Just like, you know, New York City health departments, there's and it's literally in the standards, there's an acceptable level of rat shit that's allowed in the food. You know what I mean? And it's just like, really? Who the fuck came up with that? Do you remember voting about the rat shit? Like, I don't ever remember anything coming up in a context that said, well, listen, you know, in full disclosure, and we're worried about GMOs, which I'm totally behind. I don't believe in fucking with the natural dynamic of things. I think that's just asking for trouble. But we're also living in a way that's completely unsustainable. So I'm not sure where the middle ground is. But again, I know for sure that rat shit was never part of the equation.
Well, yeah, and then that GMO thing, it's one thing to put a salmon DNA in a tomato to make it so it can grow in the winter, but it's a whole other thing to like cross-process, like cross-pollinate different strains of corn to make it more resistant to disease. I think there should be with GMOs, because that's all GMO. Ask me more about GMOs. I had a hyperfixation once, and so
please,
where do you?
I mean, that's the whole point. We can talk about whatever the point.
Where do you have the line? And there should be a modicum amount of GMOs allowed, but when you come to manipulating, like with chemicals or preservatives or anything like that, it's like there should be a line. But I mean, to say all GMOs.
Well, I mean, didn't Mary Shelley try to kind of explain what happens when you fuck with the natural order? You know, and granted, yes, obviously, you know, the chickens that you're buying in the supermarket is not the same analogy as building an evil Frankenstein, but they're not that far off. You're taking aspects of things that we really do not understand. We're guessing. A lot of this is just trial and error. You know what I mean? We're just, it's like Stephen King's The Stand. We're just hoping that the bug doesn't get out of the fucking laboratory and wipe us all out. But we're fucking around with things that we have no business fucking around with. And the only reason we're fucking around with it is greed and control.
Yeah, because
and
it's not, everyone's like, oh, it'd be such a great advancement and everyone would be fed. Like, we could feed everybody right now. Like, literally, we could feed and house everybody. All of the unhoused and all of the hungry could be fed right at this moment. If we didn't have the rules that said you had to throw away surplus, and we didn't have the rules that said only people who earn a living are allowed to eat, like, or, that's where.
Oh, wait, hold on. Yes, I have been notified that we have been officially labeled as communists. I just wanted to let you know that.
Oh.
As soon as you open, well, there's a thing now that as soon as you cross a particular line, if you start talking about feeding people or giving them housing or anything,
I don't know whether to apologize or
this is the new handbook. Like, if you talk about clean water, you're a communist. If you talk about women's rights, you're a fucking communist.
Does it give you that little like magic noise too?
Well, I just that's kind of like, because how much stock I really put in that shit, so I kind of had to, I was looking at the buttons.
That to you. I was very excited. I was like, oh, I want that.
But I can send you that. That's actually quite easy. That's just a little bit of technical magic. But this is the world we live in now. You know what I mean? And it gets deeper. You know what I mean? If you tend to, go a little bit further along the line, you know what I mean? You must be satanic pedophiles. You know what I mean? Hanging out in a pizza parlor in Washington, D.C. That's where the front is, by the way, everybody. But people, and listen, a guy, and this is the insanity, and I make a joke of it because it is just so horribly fucked up. Somebody actually bought into that and went down there armed looking for the satanic pedophiles. You know what I mean? It's just like, what the fuck, man? And this is what is being now bred from this. My son uses the analogy that somewhere on the right side of the fence, there's a forge master, and he's basically taking human souls and forging night creatures with them. This is the real threat. Now, again, he says that jokingly because he's a big fan of the pop art and the anime and the stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it really is. It is.
But he's not wrong.
No, it's a conditioning thing. They're weaponizing fear and misinformation and then driving, the mob mentality. You go get a pitchfork, go get a torch, you know what I mean? Go get in a car. Right.
The Cold War going, and it's you're not going to fly. And I mean, can I add communist to my title? Is like vampire communist witch or communist
feel free, you know what I mean? In this day, well, listen, you and I both know people are going to think what they're going to think anyway. They look at certain analogies. I still go through it, but I made some conscious choices. I'm like, you know what? I did the corporate thing. I cut my hair. I played by their rules, and it almost destroyed me. So when I came out the kind of flip side of that, I'm like, fuck it. I'm going back to my long hair. I'm going back to my music. I'm not hiding my tattoos anymore. I'm going to use a lot of fucks in my language, and I'm going to call out bullshit wherever I see it. And granted, some people have peeled off along the way, but here's the other side of the analogy. Were they really your friend? Did they really care about you, or did they really only want the illusion? You see where I'm going? When we speak up, and you made a great point, when you started to do the things that you needed to do to heal yourself, all of a sudden people turned around and are like, what the fuck's wrong with you? And I'm like, I'm trying to heal myself. What do you mean, what the fuck is wrong with me?
Yeah, they want you back in your box, and because what you provided was more important than who you were. That's usually how that works. And I have known that side as well. And, tried to, because as I said, was a person who would put the problems on my shoulders and try and be a problem solver until it almost broke my back. And then when I was like, I can't do this anymore, they're like, well, you're not really our friend anymore. So,
well,
like, okay, there we go.
There's a meme somewhere floating around, and it's apt. They only love you when they're hungry.
Right.
But if the flip side analogy, you're a fucking vampire witch, it's just like, well, who knows hunger better than a fucking vampire? It's like,
yes.
you know, again, you're back to that, hey, play fucked up games, win fucked up prizes.
It's true. It's true. And like, if you're a vampire and you live through aeons and eternity, how can you not be pro like feeding everybody? Even because I need to eat.
Well,
So
I mean, you have
Well,
to. It's a basic common sense type of thing. You know, if we're livestock to you, you want to keep your livestock fed. So
alive and healthy and
right,
well fed.
yeah,
Yes.
but, you know,
And happy. I'm all about free range humans. This is a joke.
See,
that was
now,
a joke.
again, since I'm a wolf, I'll just let you know that we don't taste good. Okay, trust me on this.
Oh, wolves and vampires. You know that the whole myth about the battle there. That's all.
Oh, that's bullshit.
We're all
Yeah, no.
friends.
I just meant. Listen, I understand you got to do what you got to do, and you know, since I'm going to obviously be hanging out with you over the weekend, I'm going to be compelled to be like, all right, fine. You know what I mean? What kind? I would be an asshole wolf if I were just to walk by. You're going to be looking all pathetic. I'm hungry. Feed me. I'm like, all right, fuck it. Here you go. You know what I mean? Just, but
No,
all joking aside, it is, and you said it very well. It's not like the stereotypical analogy. You're taking an aspect of energy, an aspect of darkness that for all intents and purposes causes people pain, causes them problems. Mm-hmm. You know, I'll use like the Heath Ledger, you know, Sin Eater analogy. How is that bad?
Yeah, no, that's I compare myself to a Sin Eater a lot. And because sometimes I will put myself into positions to take hits for people, and it's because I can, because vampire witch, like you nail it. I'm pretty tough for the tiny little thing that I am, but spiritually and energetically, like that's kind of part of it. And I that's funny you brought it up, because I was just talking to somebody about that the other day, because they were having a problem. I discovered a problem, I should say. That was someone magically doing some bad magical stuff to somebody else. And I neutralized it, but I also put my signature on it. So
you left the calling card, as they say.
I left the calling card. And then I was like, that was probably, I was also in the temper. Bit of a volcano. But I was like, so here I am, firing squad. So they wouldn't leave the other people alone. And I'm okay with it, because I'm like, I know I can take it, but it was literally taking the health of somebody I cared about. So here I am. It's what I do, and it's not always the smart thing. I don't always think things through, but you know, we're all on a journey.
Well, it is part of the learning curve. If we don't fuck up, how do we learn?
Know I can handle.
But I also live by a philosophy. I would rather be wrong for the right reasons. You see where I'm going? You know, if you look at motivation, if you look at context, those two elements right there really define certain aspects. Because you can take the same scenario, and if the motive and the context aren't the same, you know what I mean? Then it's empty. It's not real. So you at least did it out of a pure element. All right, you saw somebody else suffering. You knew you had the ability to shift that dynamic, even if it meant deflecting it onto you. I would say more than anything else, that's more of a truer representation of the old Knights Code, to defend those who can't defend themselves. Yes. You know this shit's real. You know what I mean? You understand it for what it is. So when you see it in play, obviously, and myself and a lot of others, it pisses us off, and we're compelled to react because we know it. You know what I mean? It's the same analogy of walking past a house that's on fire and hearing children screaming in there. Can you really walk the fuck away? Even though you know running into the building may not end up well for you, how do you not at least try? I mean, I think that's what defines I mean, you know, I probably never ever said, but you're probably a good vampire. Like, you know what I mean? That you know.
I try.
You're not as scary as maybe you want but maybe that's just me because I'm a wolf.
That's really true. That's that's a big running joke between myself and a lot in the vampire community and even the witch community, because I'm like, I am spooky, I am terrifying, and they're like, you're adorable, stop it. And I'm like, I am scary.
You want to be scary.
I want to be scary, but at the same time, the few people, well, 2 people who have ever seen me angry or righteous or in a place of that are going, okay, no, I see where I see the vampire, and that's my husband and one other person who was a witness, because I was like, I need somebody there, so I keep my hands to myself.
Well, let's take a moment. Let's take a moment and give him a shout out, because not enough men do what he has done. It sounds like, from everything you described, and I consider myself pretty good at reading certain dynamics, you can hear when people talk about other people how they're reflected in it. And everything in what you described, everything that you said, reflects not only an incredibly beautiful aspect of the connection that you have, but one that is obviously open-minded, tolerant, supportive. And we need more of this, and we need more of this in men to set the standard for the next generation of men. This is how, again, not to be redundant, but how we break some of these generational cycles. And, again, obviously, as a vampire, you know what I mean? You're not gonna just fucking shack up with any fucking mortal. So, I mean, this guy's got to have something going for him. I mean, is he part of the Talamasca? I mean, is he really Talamasca? Is that what's going on here?
Well, we've definitely done this dance before as a wedded couple. And we've been married 15 years. And it's funny because, so I am very much on the queer spectrum. I am a pansexual, polyamorous, out there person. And the pansexual, bisexual part he knew about already. The poly kind of came later, but it came up later in our marriage, and we were talking about it, and he worked so hard, and he was a little icky about it, a little like, what, because he was fearful of the emotional connection of making other partners and stuff like that. And he worked so hard, he stole a tarot deck from me and started reading his own cards.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And this is someone who says, I believe in dirt. I think DNA is the only eternal thing when I married him. And, but he said, I may not believe in everything you do, but I believe in you. Or, the fact that I don't believe in it doesn't make it true. That was his statement. And he just did so much work, and he is like truly the best partner I could ever ask for.
That's a testament to his character, because let's really be honest. Most men can't handle that dynamic because we're trained, we're conditioned into believing that is some threat to our sexuality, our identity, our manhood. You know what I mean? Whatever words you want to throw on it, but also in the narrative of allowing the person that you care about, aka you, to be yourself. That takes courage. You know what I mean? That's not an easy thing to do, especially within today's standards and, cultural frameworks. And, obviously, you guys have 3 kids. You've been doing it for a while. So something is working. So I always like to reinforce that. I want to give people the positive. You can make a long-term relationship work. You can find ways to compensate. Granted, there's always give and take. There's no such thing as perfect. It doesn't fucking exist. It's another one of those illusions. But when we actually communicate, when we actually find ways to be authentic, we tend to be happier. You know what I mean? Yeah. Again, it's not rocket science.
Well, and my other statement on that is, when you get married past like the 10-year mark, it's totally normal to go periods of time as best friends and roommates. It does come back eventually, but especially if you're raising kids, it's okay to be that for a couple, for a while. It's not always sunshine and rainbows and romance. So that's a big part of it, is acknowledging that it doesn't look like the storybook. It doesn't look like maybe what your grandparents had and they're still holding hands. It maybe doesn't look like anybody else's, but if it works for you, it works. It works.
Very well said. Very well said. So listen, before we close this out, because we're getting up on the 3-hour mark, we're definitely going to have you come back again. I know you mentioned you're going to England sometime, around November, you said?
Yes, I'm going November 9th, and that is for my priestess, the first part of my priestess training and initiation into the priestess of Avalon, Morgan Le Fay Mystery School. I am starting with my death priestess work over there.
So you're gonna go dance in Avalon, are you?
Yes, I am going to Glastonbury.
Okay.
Yes.
When are you coming back?
I come back the 15th, so I'll be back. Yeah, I'm flying back 15th.
Oh, cool. So you'll be back in plenty of time. We'll get you in here before the end of the year. But
perfect. It was so great to be here. I love this.
Oh no, listen, you definitely you're definitely within the spectrum of everybody else that floats within these circles. Like, again, there are certain aspects I've learned, just as you have, to be able to read over the years. So I make it a point that even if there's just a single common thread, that I try and draw upon that. I think that again, the only real hope, if you remove the bullshit and the joking and everything aside, we have to talk to each other. We have to share our stories, be they dreams, be they nightmares, or whatever in between. Mm-hmm. It's the only way we're going to understand each other, and again, find those small pieces of common ground to work the things that have to be done. I mean, again, you have kids, you understand the analogy. If we don't do it, who the fuck's going to do it at this juncture? We're just going to sit around and just wait for it all to fucking collapse. I mean, again, I would rather try than not. You know what I mean? Just to be able to look at myself in the fucking mirror, and I get the impression you have a similar philosophy on it.
Yeah, yeah, I do. Very
but
much so.
Ultimately, also too, there is no magic potion, there is no magic spell that's just going to, make everything, as you say, unicorn parts. It's just not going to fucking happen. Yeah. So it's going to be painful to certain degrees, but I'd like your analogy. Just even if we're just pulling on one piece of the yarn, we get a couple other people pulling here, pulling there. Maybe somebody's like, hey, if you pull the yarn this way, you see where I'm going? And maybe you can see the yarn from a better perspective because I'm distracted by some other bullshit. You know what I mean?
But we're talking to each other too. And that's the big thing. It's community. And it's about, we are being subversive in the fact that we are actually forming a community and talking to each other. And that is the important thing.
Strength in numbers, sisters, strength in numbers. Absolutely. So one final shout out. Why don't you tell everybody where you're going to be October 28th and 29th?
Rock and Oddities Con. I will be in the Paranormal Experience on Saturday, and then I will be doing readings in the Witch's Den on Sunday. So I'll have two different places you could find me, and the Paranormal Experience will be a ritual and also an opportunity to come and take a photo op with me in my full garb and fangs, and I think we might have a coffin. We might. So I might sit in it. I don't know. We have to figure that out, but it would be really cool.
Well,
either way, come and find out if I get a coffin. I want a coffin.
Well, listen, Jim has already got me. We were joking about it really the other day. It was just like, there's no way I can't go. I gave Jem my word. I believe in holding.
Absolutely have to go.
But I'm not going to lie. There's a part of me that there's a little fear. Like I have a witch in my life, and I have a couple other witches on the peripheral. But I'm going to be surrounded by fucking witches and vampires and all this stuff. And I'm sure you can imagine the analogy as a wolf. I'm just like, oh man, I'm gonna have to deal with all this. Well, listen, I
all love wolves.
Yeah, but listen, it's just the nature dynamic, because you also know, like, if I'm hiding in your coffin the whole weekend, it's all good. But it's everybody else that's going to be showing up. You see where I'm going, and they're going to be like, "Oh, look, it's But I also promised Jim. Well, here's the other the flip side. Jokingly, Shay and I were talking about. She's like, "Well, I'm going to have like the snake charmers and the belly dancers," and she's like, "I hope nobody's going to get weird." I'm like, "Sister, you don't have to worry about anybody getting weird, because I'm going to have like guys like Pete Palace from Annika and some old school Brooklyn guys and shit like that." I said, if anybody even fucking thinks about going sideways, it's going to be the least of their fucking worries. Now, again, full disclosure, that's not, trying to front as, come to the Rock Oddities Con, you get your ass kicked. But I will say this, you play fucked up games, you win fucked up prizes. So there is,
yourself.
well, listen, Jem is very, and this is one of the things I really respect about her. She doesn't tolerate bullshit. So everybody, listen, have a good time, come out and, enjoy, but remember that you're going to be in a building filled with witches and vampires and wolves and fucking metalheads from Brooklyn who are not going to tolerate, stupid shit like somebody running up on you and like, well, you're a vampire. That means I can grab you by the pussy. And it's just going to be like, yeah, no, you're not going to be doing any of that.
No, the most things I get are like, well, you bite me. You can bite me. You can bite me. That's what I get. And I go, if I did that, you would probably be really upset.
Yeah. Oh, because it's not going to go, like, again, they're imagining.
Go the way you think
they're imagining the Anne Rice seduction and shit, and they're just forgetting Akasha.
Like from Dusk Till Dawn,
going on a fucking blood rampage. It's like, you fucking idiot. This is not how it works.
Right.
Again, sometimes, this is the part that I think really has to be combated sometimes with the darkness. And there's an old saying, sometimes it takes a greater evil to fight evil.
Well, that's a big takeaway from a lot of my work too, is apex predator work. Like, be the biggest, be the toughest. Be the predator if you need to. If there's predators there, you prey on the predators, Well,
or the evildoer, using the Anne Rice analogy.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because again, if we're talking honestly, in a real world, the Savage Garden doesn't give a fuck about your ethics or your religious views or your sexuality or any of that given shit. It's like jumping into a fucking lake full of crocodiles. The crocodiles are like, yeah, fresh meat, fuck you. We don't care if you're a Jew, a Christian, a fucking Scientologist. They like Scientologists better. I heard that their meat's a little bit, more tender. Well, because they sit on their asses and they take advantage of other people. You know what I mean? So when you don't really have to work for a living, you get that nice fleshy type of thing. But I'm sure you would also appreciate they don't have really good energy. The blood probably tastes, something.
A little coagulated, a little thick.
Well, like, again, like you remember when you were a kid and you went to the zoo, you know what I mean? There are certain things, like I get that horse shit smell, that the first thing that comes to my mind. And it just, when you're talking about the analogy of, having to eat a shit sandwich, it's just like, yeah, no, I'll take a pass. You know what I mean? That's not appetizing to me. But it's also sometimes great in the narrative, especially for you. And let's be honest about it. As a woman, there are going to be certain stereotypical perceptions. And then add to it that you have a smaller stature, you dress a particular way, you have tattoos, you've got bangs. So there's always going to be these extra layers of bullshit that you have to kind of, wade your way through just to be authentic about yourself without having to, again, explain or justify or dance through any of these other fucking hoops.
Yes, and that's where that gift of, some of the vampire magic of the CK variety, kind of helps out, because we have things for those very specific purposes, and also for pushing people energetically away and all that kind of good stuff, and making myself seem bigger than I am, and sometimes making myself seem smaller, all that good stuff. But I have intimidated my fair share of annoying people.
Well, listen, I have another one of those little, and I did this one for Shy. It's one of these, another little button moment. When all else fails, we always, again, those of us with magic, have this particular card to play.
Emotional damage.
Yes. Emotional damage is always a powerful tool. Okay.
I'm sorry, but that's great.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, because you can't go to jail for that. So when you mind fuck somebody and you just send them home a wreck of themselves, do you know what I mean? Sometimes, listen, the the punishment needs to fit the crime. So, if you're not acting in an appropriate kind of way, if you're coming out with that racist kind of bullshit, or if you're coming out with any of those, hateful type of narratives, then, you deserve to get mind fucked in a way. Now,
Yes.
the old me would have taken a more dark shadow approach, but I've also learned, and, I've kind of taken this, okay, I'm only going to dance that dance if I have no other choice. I'd rather try. I'll give people the benefit of the doubt. Say, listen, I will hear you. I will listen to you until, and there's that line. Right. It's just like, here's the line. Just don't cross the fucking line, man. Just please, just don't make me have to do it.
Don't do that, because I will, and I've done, and I want to, and that's the other part of that shadow. It's kind of like when you integrate your shadow. It's, yes, you have all that ick, but you know that you're capable of this great darkness. Now you'll know what it is. You can use it when it's warranted,
and you can also recognize it now in other people around you, which is a great tool to have. And you can be like, oh yeah, I know that smell. Bullshit. It's bullshit, right? Listen, sometimes that's the greatest defense that we have, being able to recognize reality from illusion, because illusion, the glamour, is everywhere. We're taught it. That's the core of business, okay, of capitalism. It is a framework of convince them that they need to buy something that they don't need. What is a better example of a glamour illusion than sales? You know what I mean?
Right.
Buy the ShamWow now, only $19.95. Yeah, it's only made with radioactive materials. It might make your asshole bleed, but you need what? No, you need to now. And it's bullshit. And we sell it. And then we wonder why, and again, I've been on that end of the spectrum. I hated it. It just left such a horrible taste in my mouth. And I just realized I couldn't do it. So I would do things. I'd be like, ma'am, you don't really want to buy this product because it's bullshit. And then that was the end of my sales career. It was just like, yeah, no, we can't have it. We can't have an honest salesman. Fuck that. You're going to fuck up our bottom line. So I found different ways. I found ways to work around it, to be able to use language, to use words, and to be able to read the room, as they say, and be like, okay, this is where you're coming from. This is where you're coming from. Let's find at least some lesser of the two fucking evils and just, kind of cut through at least some of the bullshit. But weaponized empathy is a real thing. It's used at every level. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter if you're talking in a religious or a romantic or a business. It's everywhere because people have their own agendas. And we tend to frame that with, I want what I want. So I'm going to manipulate the things around me to get. Now, sometimes that's good. It's good to have drive. It's good to have incentive. If you want to build a house, you got to do the work. You got to, have the right tools and stuff like that. And it's like anything.
Get your people, the bank, to give you the money.
Well, the money lenders, but we don't want to go there. But,
but I'm just saying,
it's like anything. It's how we use it. You could use a hammer to build, or you could use it to bash somebody's fucking brains in. It's not the fucking hammer's fault. The hammer's just a goddamn tool. It doesn't give a shit. So it's us. We're the ones responsible. The choices we make, what our context is, what our motives are. You know what I mean? And it does reflect in even just the basic things, how we treat each other. You know what I mean?
Yes.
If you don't have the actions to back up the words, then again, by its very definition, it's not real. It's a fucking illusion. It's a glamour. Yeah. But you use it, again, I think, to certain degrees also to make it a little bit easier, because you have to cut through the old narratives. You have to cut through the fear and, to some degrees, the distrust and the uncomfortability with it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And, and sometimes it's like, I am feisty. So like I did learn some fighting skills. I did take Muay Thai and martial arts and some other stuff. So I do have that tendency inside of me too. I tend not to use it because I don't want to break a nail.
You're a fucking ninja vampire on top of it? Jesus Christ.
Yeah, well, severely ADHD. I had hyperfixations all over the place. So I'm a little bit good. I'm good at a little bit of everything, but only like so much. So I have a little bit of knowledge in a lot of areas.
Just enough to inflict damage.
Yes, just enough to be dangerous. That's they've been wanted to tell me. But yeah, no. So I have that, and then I also know that I'm usually surrounded by people who will help. So that's the other thing is there's also strength in knowing when to defer.
Well, listen, strength in numbers. You know what I mean?
Strength in numbers,
right?
And that's what we need.
And also too. And I'm sure, and this is the read I get from you at least on it, it wasn't like you woke up one day and you're like, how can I be more creative in being able to inflict pain? I'm betting it was born more of a, I have to protect myself because no one else is going to do it. And I don't want to ever feel this way again. So the next motherfucker that steps to me wrong is going to lose his balls.
He's going to be in the ER.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now I'm correct in that read, aren't I?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. It was born in necessity.
Yeah. That exact sentence too. Like that's it. It was that I am going to make someone pay when they are ready to step over that line. I am so ready. Ready.
And we were going to cut out, but we're going to keep this because I think this is an important one. So I'm just going to keep this going. That is a better coping skill. It's a better healing skill, in my personal opinion, than drowning in darkness or depression or self-loathing or any number of analogies that happen to people when they are victimized, when they are traumatized, when they're assaulted and stuff. They tend to internalize it. It sounds like in your process, you eventually turned it around and said, you know what, fuck this. I'm not going to be defined by this. I'm going to fight back.
Yes. And that was a later development because I was consumed and I had to do the process and the work and the grieving and the anger and all that and the therapy. But that was the development that came about after my first son was born. And I realized that I now had a little person that if someone tried to take him from me or anything like that, I wanted to know how, because it wasn't just my life on the line anymore. So that was where I turned all of that into learning how to back up my words. And
listen, you share the same dynamic that I do, and Shai and my mother and Diana and pretty much everybody that floats within our circles. As high functioning empaths, we're great at helping other people. We're just not usually really good at fucking helping ourselves because we're on the inside looking out. That's where we need the strength in numbers because we can't. I mean, it has to start. You made a great, context about learning the cards, working on yourself first, because if you don't understand how to heal yourself, how the fuck can you heal somebody else? But also, too, and I think, I'm not off the mark in saying that your process of healing, you didn't just do by yourself in a dark hole by yourself. Eventually, that process involved other people giving you tools, giving you support, giving you love, giving you encouragement, giving you whatever it was you needed to find your way out of the darkness. Right.
Yes. And it was mostly therapy after my teenage years. But it was that, and, I would like to say that there were other people, but it really was mostly therapy because I didn't trust anybody for a very long time until I met my... That
process evolved. Yeah. I mean, you obviously were able... Right. You have a husband, you have 3 children. You've been able to shift the narrative in a way that you've taken these horrors and you've made them not only into learning experience, but you've molded them now into tools that you can use. Most people, again, don't even get out of the grieving part of it. And let's be honest, we see it all the time. We don't have resources. We don't have the types of things that we should to support the people around us when they go through these things. You ask any woman that has gone through any type of, fucking domestic abuse type of situation, and, it's like, it's a fucking shit show. And it really is.
There's
And
a lot of
it's pathetic.
There's a lot of resources, quote unquote, but they can only do so much, and within only so much context. Like, it has to be a very specific situation to get them out, and it's horrible. But it's also because there's just no infrastructure in place for it because it's not a priority. So it's systemic. Also, a lot of systemic stuff. But yes, a lot of.
But I would submit that's all the more reason that people need to go to the Rock and Oddities Con and sit in your fucking chair.
Yes, because we can start working on healing the shadows, looking at what needs to be released and changed and integrated, and give you some steps to, move forward with it without having to sit in the darkness alone. And the ritual that is part of the paranormal is going to call a bit of the shadows forth, usually in the form of some kind of ancestral entities, and then readings. I will also be doing like a group read on it as well. So, it should be interesting because due to the season, I'm going to call on ancestors of magic and witchcraft for the group, like within their lines. So it should be interesting. I'm kind of excited to see what comes up because this is being entirely guided by my spiritual team that I work with on the other side, and kind of more of their idea. And I'm going, can I really do this? And they're like, absolutely. I'm like, okay, great. We're going to find out. It's going to be interesting, but it's going to be great.
But I love the honesty. Listen, you and I both know when things are easy, it's easy. You know what I mean? That by its very nature, that's what it is. When the shit hits the fan, that's really what defines some of these elements. And you have surfed through them. You danced it. And you come out the other end to say, you know what? I did it. You can too. Let me show you. Let me help you. Let me give you some tools. Let me give you some insight. And along the way, maybe you get something else out of it. Take what you need, leave the rest behind. But you're at least out there, you're putting it out there, which again is not always easy to do, especially when it's something that's outside the box.
Yes. And that's something that evolves as it goes, because I am doing what I'm told is needed. And it's kind of like, all right, can I have a plan? And they're like, we're working on it. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to make this plan. And then I made the plan. I had a really good structured ritual all written out. And they're like, throw it away. That's not it. I'm like,
so listen, we have one of those interesting moments before we close out. One of the things that Shia does on her shows is, she does tarot readings and she does a lot of free cards for people. So Julie Moody has come into the podcast. Welcome, Judy. Unfortunately, Julie, this is the podcast where we don't do tarot card readings. However, this might just be the magical moment. Heather, do you have your cards?
I actually do. I had them with me. I've been shuffling them as we were.
So, Julie, you're going to get a special magical moment. You're the only one that's gotten this tonight because we never do this really. Even I, as a reader, will only periodically come out and do card readings. It's a running joke with everybody in the community. When the wolf readings come around, everybody's like, yes, let's go explore the darkness. Because I'll pull out my fucking demon deck and I do the same shit. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, shadow work.
Yep, exactly. Well, listen, I believe that's where people need the most help. Like Absolutely. You, I'm not really interested in, telling you when you're going to get laid again or, any of that type of stuff. It's just like, let's take a look at the reasons why you feel compelled to want to go out and get fucked. Because you may not like the way you're going to get fucked. So let's have an honest conversation. And that's just my take on it. So, Julie, Heather is going to pull a card for you. Now, keep in mind, she dances in the darker elements like I do. So you're not going to get a unicorn part. You're not going to get any of that sweet candy stuff. You're going to get a slice of the darkness.
Yes. And it's Julie.
Her name is Julie Moody.
You're clinging to something too hard. You got to let it go. Okay. Because I'm using my deck that was consecrated to Lilith. So she's telling you you're like giving power away, and willingly. And freely, and you're wondering why you're so exhausted all the time. And it's because you are so invested in giving it away, because it's like you're dancing around the subject, and it's because it's filling a void, and you're kind of avoiding the big ick, which is that it's distracting you from the work you need to do on yourself. It's the Empress card, and I'm using, as I said, my Tarot of the Vampires, which is consecrated to Lilith, and when she comes up, she is a bit of the clinger. But it's also because you're doing it out of love, and you believe love looks a very specific way, and that's with like all of the self-sacrifice and none of the reciprocity, and that's not what it's supposed to look like. And you're allowed to take some of that back for yourself, and you're allowed to actually turn that on yourself and nurture yourself as much as you are giving this power away to others. I did pull 3 cards because I always am overzealous, but because I got the 5 of Scepters, which is 5 of Wands, and the 8 of Scepters, it's the confrontation of the shadow. If you don't bring it up, if you don't try and address it, the universe is kind of going to throw it in your face, and it's like, this is you going to be having to stand in your power. Excuse me. And you're not speaking your truth right now, because I can feel it in my throat. That's why I'm talking funny now. But that authenticity factor is there. You're judging your words too harshly. So I do see you have a lot of willpower and a lot of strength inside. So it's just a matter of redirecting the energy back to you. And I think you'll be able to really thrive and nurture once you realize the balance is just too much drain, and needs to turn it back in.
Now, as kind of a translator, part of what I got off of that, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I see it as a pattern in a lot of high-functioning empaths, is we tend to invest ourselves in the illusion because it is safer and more comfortable than the shitty reality of it. And we tend to invest hoping that we can uncover the proverbial diamond in the rough, and it doesn't exist. So we just keep pumping our energy, we pump our love into it, and as you said, it doesn't come back.
Right. And in a way, it's gotten so far that it's actually like you're willing to say, oh, I don't really need to eat or autonomy, or I don't need to sleep like a full 9 hours. Maybe if I'll wait for your phone call. Like that's the kind of thing where you're willingly giving up boundaries and power to this other person or persons, multiple. It seems like it could be one of both, because you're a nurturer, you're a healer. So you are very much invested in helping all those around you. And that is the natural state of being. So it feels more comfortable to do for others, because it's never comfortable for us to do it on ourselves.
Yeah, we were just talking about that.
Yeah, we always kind of like,
the curse of the empath, right? We can help
we
everybody else, but we can't help ourselves because we do. Well, listen, a lot of times we are conditioned to believing we don't deserve it, that somehow we're not worthy of it. Many
or we
times,
can do it when everybody else is taken care of.
And they're never taken care of.
And then they're never done. Yeah, like I can rest when everybody's like not, their lives aren't falling apart, and it's like their lives keep falling apart because you keep doing stuff for them and they can't figure it out on their own. That's why it keeps falling apart.
That's the tough love analogy. Sometimes we have to let people make their mistakes because it's the only way they fucking learn and evolve.
Yes, because we cannot do the journeys for them. So there is that. And so I get astrological stuff. So I got Saturn in Leo, which is the 5 of Scepters. That's all about confronting your just shadow stuff, the stuff, especially about your identity and who you are. It's almost like this is really infringing on, well, I can't stop because I am a healer, I'm a giver, I'm a doer, I am this nurturing person. It's like you're allowed to take some of it back and still be that person. Your identity will not be less because you make boundaries around your healing skills. And then the 8 of Scepters is Mercury and Sagittarius, which means you're going to have to start speaking up about your boundaries and your needs. You're going to have to start actually communicating the hard things. Yes, it's going to hurt feelings. there may be miscommunication. You may say it the wrong way the first time and have to apologize, try again. But this is all worth that because it is going to drain you dry. That is like coming from a vampire. I know a thing or two about draining people dry. So don't do that because it's really hard to come back. And that's when energetic body and physical body can, start to exhibit symptoms together. But this has been you get a bit of energy vampirism as well. I think that's also that Empress card where you actually get fed a little bit of energy whenever you help somebody. I call it like a reader's high or like a buzz off of, it's the empath buzz that you get from almost mingling energies that way. However, it's not enough to keep you going because you will constantly be giving more than you're actually taking, because I feel like the energy that the situation or person that you're giving the energy to is not reciprocating in any way, shape, or form. It is just a drain.
Well, that is, I think, a great way to dive into the shadows. And again, I'm a firm believer in this. We don't understand the darkness. We have no way out of it. So it really is, again, a common sense framework that we need to understand these things.
And I can't see comments, so I don't know if she said anything since then.
She said, sweet, okay, yes, okay. Julie, I hope that gave you some insight. I'm not sure to what degree what each word was reflective of where you were at in it. But listen, I mean, again, I am a firm believer that you take what you need, you leave the rest behind. Whatever speaks to you, speaks to you. This is all interpretive. So your translation is reflective of the moment. And many times we won't be able to understand and see that in the moment. We may have to, maybe it's an hour later, maybe it's a fucking year later, you know what I mean? Until it actually shifts in a way that, okay, now it fucking makes sense. And she's saying right now, awesome reading. Thanks so much. So yeah,
I should also say that you got 2 scepters, which is the wand suit, which is like fire, it's creative work. It's your spark. So you got to protect that spark because it's still there. But you don't have to give it all away because it is a beautiful light that you want to share, but you need to reserve some of that for yourself. So protect it because you're going to need it.
Very cool. So listen, Julie showed up. And this is how the universe works. And I think this is a beautiful moment of how magic really plays out in the real world, the practical magic. Julie just shows up. She's thinking it's one of Shia's tarot readings and stuff. And she's conditioned.
You got a vampire instead. But
well, she's used to because Shia does this thing. Hey, if you share out, she'll give you a card reading. She wants to encourage people to explore. She wants to engage people. So it isn't just always about the money with her. So she does that. So a lot of the people who come here and hang out and stuff like that will sometimes, as she did, she'd be like, oh, there's a live going on. Let me jump on. And she immediately came in. She was like, hello, shared card, please. And I'm just like, well, no, that wasn't.
And she got 3.
Yes. Well, it wasn't actually even that kind of show, but the universe said to me, hey, maybe Julie needs this. You do this. So I was like, hey, this is a great place to explore that shadow. And you generously were like, you were just like, shadows? Let's go. Sure, you're just like, jump right the fuck in. So I really appreciate that.
I always wanted to do like the live free readings, but they look so overwhelming and tough. So I don't, because I shy away from that. Because I'm like, I don't know. I'm also not very tech savvy. So
well, you did fine. I mean, listen.
I just have to talk to Mike on this one.
Right. Well, I mean, but
reading comments and stuff like that, they go so fast that I'm like, I'm going to.
Well. Listen, there are ways to work around that, but you did great. Julie is appreciative, and I think it's a great way to end the show. I have, for those of you at home that are actually watching and not just listening to the show, I have your other promo image, which has, creator of Identity Magic and Alchemy of Self.
Oh, yes.
The
Follow me on my social.
Right, and it's got, your TikTok and your Instagram and all that type of stuff. So, yeah, if you want to learn more, you can check out the Vampire Witch Salome. Okay, you can find her on Facebook, online, all that groovy stuff. You might find her hanging in the shadows, and if you find her in a coffin, I would highly advise not to open said coffin without consent. Without
snacks or without snacks.
Snacks. Well, but see, you're a vampire, so that's a loaded word. When you say snacks to me, I see bloodletting. Okay, I'm not gonna lie.
That's open with caution and snacks.
Well, that's why I said. But I think consent's better. I'm always like, get the consent. Hey, may I open your coffin? And if you get the growly no, it's time to step the fuck off. But here's the other side of the coin. Sometimes those open, it's like, yes, please, by all means, open my coffin. And it's just like,
open the coffin, right, I think you are the snack.
Well, it's Dante's analogy. When you peer into the abyss, sometimes the abyss looks back. So
yes,
be careful what you wish for, boys and girls. You just might get it. But listen, truly, thank you very much. It really was a pleasure. I'm looking forward to hanging out with you over that weekend. Listen, it's going to be a blast. October 28, 29, Saratoga Springs, the Rock and Oddities Con. You can find out more at rockodditiescon.com, social media, Facebook. It's going to be a fucking event to be remembered. Heather, whole lot of people, bands, you name it. It's all going to be there. A lot of witches, a lot of power, and a lot of beauty. So don't just believe all the old narratives, okay? Nobody's gonna sacrifice a goat. You're not gonna sacrifice a goat, right?
No.
Okay, now I can officially say nobody's gonna sacrifice a goat. You know what I mean? It's not gonna be anything that fucking ridiculous, but it's gonna be fun. People are gonna laugh. They're gonna dance. You know what I mean? They're gonna share aspects of things that we've been cut off from. And you know this like I do. This is probably one of the greatest tragedies of the human story, is that we've been cut off from magic. We've been cut off from the beauty of laughter, of just simply, dancing for no other sake than to just fucking dance.
Yes, and where Wheel of the Year is turning to the season of death, which is when we recount the joys of summer and release that which no longer serves and prepare for the winter ahead. And it's about the joyous celebration of life and how death is also part of life.
See, now that's spoken like a witch. The vampire in you would be like, just come out so I can feed on you all. But the witch in you is like, see, you can't help it. The unicorn farts just sneak their way in. Because that's what I smelled. I smelled a unicorn fart. I could smell it through the microphone. Like, but
if I said you come out and you give me your snacks, that you are snacks, then it probably wouldn't come out.
Listen, we've both seen what vampire.
Don't look through my bullshit.
As we said last night, as long as they're not coming out expecting the fucking sparkly vampire bullshit thing, we're good, right?
I think I'll wear some body glitter.
Don't you fucking dare! Don't. I have enough trauma in my life. I don't need that one. I grew
up in the 90s. I think.
But listen, I have a pretty cool mental image of you. If you go fucking sparkly on me, I'm gonna have to. It's gonna take you years to work your way back, because and we talked about it last night. That to me is it's a disservice. It just is. I just think it is. Granted, yes, it goes for the low hanging fruit. All right, I get it. So we want to make it in a way that it's somewhat palatable, but it's not real. It's just like, but that's just me. I'm a fucking wolf. I'm just like, just give it to me raw.
Yeah.
You don't have to throw the sparkly bullshit on it. It's just
like the gummy bear vampires.
Well, usually all that sparkly, it's fucking toxic anyway. We already know that. You know what I mean?
They have environmentally safe glitter, and I think it's made from.
Yeah, go to any fucking rave in the city and tell me how much of that's being used. Between that and the bathtub ecstasy and fucking you just came back from Kentucky, so you understand the analogy. Somebody comes in with some 385,000 proof fucking shine that they made out of 12,000 carats and a fucking car battery, and be like, here, try this.
This will put your feelings out.
You'll find a new religion now. But this is the insanity of our culture. We always looking for new and creative ways to fuck ourselves
to try and kill
up.
Ourselves. Yeah. In a slow way.
But listen, again, and your analogy, you know what I mean? If if you want to go get down that deep, dark way, you know, go visit her. You know, she'll show you the doors. You'll probably give them the key, too. Be like, this is the key you want to use to really go to hell. There you go.
Going to hell in a handbasket.
Hey, it's better than being dragged to hell, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Willingly.
Well,
Like
consent, right. We're right back to that consent thing.
Yeah. Consent is key.
Yeah, I like to take the narrative from, I don't know if you ever followed Neil Gaiman's Sandman.
Yes.
All right. So, you know, I like that interpretation a whole lot more. You know what I mean? A little bit less of the, you know, the pseudo religious dynamic, a little bit more of the, you know, this kind of actually makes a little bit more sense, even though, yeah, you know, it is fantasy. It's not real, but I find more truth in the humanity of it in that than I do in a lot of the stuff that is supposedly, you know, supposed to be the thing. If you dig where I'm going.
Yes, and that's because that kind of stuff is our true mirror of who we are and supposed to be, and also that, you know, I think Neil Gaiman is sort of like he's a philosopher and
very deep storyteller, right?
Yeah, he's more than a storyteller, for sure. So I think
but the greatest storytellers in history also had these other elements. That's what I think allows a storyteller to really be able to convey it, because it isn't just as simple as a character or a scenery. You know what I mean? It's the weave, like you said, all these pieces of yarn all tied together. And he has the ability to pull them from multiple angles.
Yes. Yeah. And it's like that's the stories, because, you know, I forgot, I think it's probably Doctor Who or someone, but I love the, in the end, what are we but stories anyway? So just make sure yours is a good one. And so even if the stories are fiction, really amazing and beloved stories throughout history have been so much a hallmark of the mark of our humanity. And it doesn't matter if the story was about Dracula or the Sandman or, you know, any of these.
Right. They reflect our struggles. They reflect our joys, our fears, our rage,
and amplify them so that we can feel seen, feel like we lived something we never would. You know, it can be all of these things. It's be an experience that is spiritual and elevating, you know, as much as any quote unquote real text of faith. So I believe in the stories.
There's a loaded word.
I was trying because, you know,
that's the real F word. You know, we can fuckity fuck all night long, but you pull out faith. That's a dangerous word.
It is.
Yeah, very much. But it's a great way to leave it off. We got to leave a cliffhanger for next time, right?
Yes. Well, more in the future.
Absolutely. Listen, sister, I'm really looking forward to October 28th, 29th. Again, The Vampire Witch, Heather Salome. I'm going to close it out on that whole darker, deeper thing. One of the first tracks that I released last year was this deeper, darker dive that I called Demons, and it was very much reflective of this very thing that we were kind of closing out, that old narrative, the lies that they fed us as children that we have to now reconcile as adults. And I did this with my son, and my son came up with the visual concept of basically chopping up some animes to create a visual framework. Yeah, well, we don't have a fucking production budget. You know what I mean?
Awesome.
So
I think that's really cool. I'm really excited to see it.
Yeah, so we had to come up with a way. How do we put this out there in a way that really captures what we're trying to do? Because we had the musical part, and I literally, no joke, I spent years struggling with this song because it really was a piece of shadow work. That's for me like what my music and many times represent. Sometimes it'll be upbeat and, you know, this, but a lot of it's really fucking dark. You know what I mean? And I literally took some of that shit and said, you know what? I'm going to put this into music and not carry it around, not let it be something that can get out of the box and damage the people around me. because to some degrees,
Well,
that's what our darkness will do. It won't hurt us as much as it will hurt the people fucking around us.
Right. And, it hurts everything. And that's yourself and others. It's Peter Pan's shadow, when you don't acknowledge it, it starts bouncing around somebody else's bedroom.
Yeah, right.
When you have to go and tack it onto the feet. Yeah.
So, yes, I'm going to close it out with demons. And again, October 28th, 29th, we'll all be out there. It'll be a blast. So until next time, sister, thank you very much. You have a great night. And everybody out there, listen, love each other. Make sure you have consent first. Okay, that's the moral of tonight's story. And energy is real. There's the other end of it. It doesn't matter, again, the words. Everybody has their own face that they put on these things. Energy is real. And energy does transfer between us in many different ways. And some of us are gifted, like Heather, that they actually know how to work with it. And even if you just want to, make it into the cheesy vampire analogy that she's going to suck the darkness out of you, well, you know what?
I'll do that.
Maybe that's actually better than carrying around that shit with you. So if that is an incentive, I don't know what the fuck is, right? It's the best I can do for an advertising promotion for you. It's just I
appreciate that.
Get the darkness sucked out of you.
Come and you get to be the real vampire.
Yes, assuming I make it back.
Yes, I'm sure you will.
I hope I do. But all joking aside, you never know what the fuck's going to happen. I may just decide, it'd be like the Grateful Dead. I'm just going to follow the witches around the country.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, no, listen. Yeah, it actually, it does have some very, you know what? I probably shouldn't talk about this because the more I talk about it, the more I'll be inclined to it. All right, I'm sorry. No more podcasts. I've just decided to go about and walkabout for the next 2 years. But seriously.
Yes.
Thank you again. It really was a pleasure. So I'm going to mute us first. I'm going to pop out the demons to close it out. Until next time, I am and will always be the Old Wolf.
Cutting deeper to teach me what was right.